Let's touch base with how it was. I was gonna try to, and then. Where are we?
I know it is.
Thank you. No problem. I was able to make it work.
Right. So there's,
They go until they have.
Are you guys good? Good evening. Welcome to Fenton Area Public Schools Board of Ed meeting tonight, February 4th at 5 o'clock. Just a reminder, while this meeting is public, it is for the purpose of conducting district business and not to be considered a public community meeting. There will be opportunity for citizens to address the board if that's something you're interested in. The sheets are next to the podium, and just make sure Stephanie has those. All right, Stephanie, can we get a roll call?
Yep. Mrs. Sudsky? Here. Mr. Pierce?
Here.
Mrs. Jewell?
Here.
Mrs. Rossmessler?
Here.
Mr. Welch?
Here.
Mrs. Jones? Here. And Mrs. Burke?
Present.
All present.
All right, can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have a motion to approve tonight's agenda as presented.
Move to approve the agenda.
We have support? Support. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, administrative reports. We're going to kick off with some elementary and middle school data presentations. Who wants to? Melissa, do you want to kick us off?
Good evening, members of the board. I'm here tonight to start the elementary winter data report and update you on the exciting work that the Teaching and Learning Department is doing around implementation of the science of reading and aligning our practices with PA 146, which is the recently approved Michigan dyslexia law, and supporting the goals outlined in our strategic plan. As you know, our strategic plan emphasizes providing educational excellence in collaboration with our community and developing innovative leaders for a global society. Recognizing the critical role that reading proficiency is in student success, we identified the need to review our existing instructional practices around reading. We knew that we needed to ensure our methods were grounded in the most effective research-based strategies. This journey began with a thorough review of our student data. We examined NWEA data, DRA scores, and the focus areas and goals of our students with an individual reading plans. This revealed that our students were struggling with some foundational reading skills like phonics and phonemic awareness. This data served as the catalyst for a change and provided a clear direction for professional development efforts. During the 23-24 school year, we took a significant step forward by providing all K-5 teachers with 3 days of intensive training focused on the science of reading. This training provided our educators with the foundational knowledge and practical strategies necessary to effectively implement evidence-based reading instruction. Building on this foundation, we've continued to refine our approach. We transitioned to a new assessment tool specifically aligned with the science of reading principles and the training that our teachers received. This ensures that we're measuring student progress accurately and using data to inform our instructional decisions. We also recognized the need to enhance our resources to support phonics instruction in our classrooms. To address this, we applied for the 35J grant, which has allowed us to acquire high-quality research-based phonics materials, as well as provide ongoing professional development to our staff. So all of our young 5th through 3rd grade teachers and administrators, and myself, are currently participating in LETRS training. It's a comprehensive program designed to deepen their understanding of the science of reading and structured literacy, and to equip them with strategies for effective literacy instruction. 4th and 5th grade teachers are also participating in a science of reading training that focuses on the skills of our 4th and 5th grade readers. This grant has allowed us to provide stipends for all teachers that completed this work outside of the school day. And that training is a 2-year process with a lot of sessions and hours outside of the school day, so that grant really helped to be able to provide compensation for our teachers to do that. Data discussions have become a central component of our work. We regularly analyze student data to identify areas where students are excelling and areas where they need additional support. These discussions inform our instructional decisions and allow us to tailor our approach to the unique needs of each learner. We also held a district-wide Science of Reading Literacy Night this fall, where parents and students traveled from different stations learning about the different components of the science of reading. At each station, they create an activity or game to take home and play that supports that component. This is one of the ways we're working to engage families in learning about how their children learn to read. Looking ahead, we have several key steps planned. We are participating in a specialized training program for our para-educators, starting in just a couple of weeks, where our instructional paras will receive 12 weeks worth of training and coaching to equip them to support our students with reading development. We'll also be applying for 35M and 35N grants, which will be coming out later this spring, to further bolster our resources and provide teachers with the materials they need to implement effective instruction. Tonight we have all 3 building principals here for the elementary schools to share some of their most recent building data. The data shows where the building is currently at, but as with any large instructional shift, it takes time to see the expected results. So our teachers and staff are still involved in the training, and we're still in the process of identifying the resources that we need, and there's a lot more work to be done, but the shifts that have already taken place have had an impact on our students in our classrooms. You'll also hear from 3 teachers about the impact this training has had on their classroom and their instructional practice. Thank you, Mrs.
Sorry, I was running late. First night of after-school classes always has a couple of glitches. Okay, so here's the data for North Road. You can see that the kindergarten and first grade numbers for at and above proficiency are phenomenal, especially for kindergarten. Most of them come to us not even knowing how to read, so that's phenomenal. I want to kind of break this down a little bit though. So the upper grades, you can see we're struggling a little bit, and a lot of that is in the comprehension and retelling piece of the Acadience assessment, and so that's the gap we need to fill. And the 5th grade teachers, that's especially the 5th grade teachers, that they recognize that right away, and they will be doing that obviously. And then of course we'll pick up. We'll fill other gaps in WIN. We have WIN meetings this week, and so we will adjust intervention according to our winter test scores. Obviously the lower grades were strong, and we probably need to tap into their strategies that they're using, tap into their knowledge and their methods, so we can pass that along and share the knowledge so that we can see successes across all grades. The next steps, like I said, we have WIN meetings this week, and that is where we will dig deeper into this as far as which students have scored where, and then that's where we do our placements for intervention or enrichment, either one. Are we going to have? Are we going to talk right now? Okay. I'd like to introduce to you Mrs. Karen Jackson. She's a 2nd grade teacher, and she has completed letters training. She was one of the first cohorts to go through and complete letters training. So I wanted her to talk to you about how she's implementing it in the classroom and the effects that she's seeing. And then after she's done, Mrs. Julie Thompson is going to speak from the interventionist perspective. So she's actually she's a lead teacher in the WIN room, and she is the one who kind of manages all the groups for all these grades. So go ahead, Karen. Thank you.
All right. Hi, I'm Karen Jackson. I teach 2nd grade at North Road. I'm very nervous, so if I sound shaky, that's why. So a couple years ago, we were in 2nd grade, and we had a group coming through that we knew, like, phonics was. I mean, we started talking about them when they were in 1st grade. We knew they were coming.
Probably the most affected from COVID, with missing the foundational skills.
Yeah.
So it was a big cohort of, I think, across the district at each building.
So we kind of started the discussion as 2nd grade teachers while they were still in 1st grade, like, what are we going to do? with these kiddos, and it just kind of felt like we were sort of spinning our wheels, like all the things that we kind of knew to do and had been doing just weren't what they needed. And so I had actually, through social media, reached out to a gal that I had gone to college with, and she had just gone through the letters training and spoke so highly of it, and they were offering the grant. So I signed up, and then I was like, hey, Julie, want to do it with me?
I joined her.
So we kind of jumped in, and it has completely changed how I teach reading in my classroom. Number one, just the knowledge it's given me. Like, you would think after going to college for 4 years and having a master's degree, like, I would feel like I knew how to teach reading, but if I'm being honest, I didn't. So I gained a ton of knowledge, and a lot of that I was able to share with my students, like, why are we doing some of the things we're doing? How is this impacting your brain? Which they thought was really cool. And just feeling like I finally had a roadmap of what to do. I felt more in control. I felt like I could take each of my students and figure out exactly what they needed and where my instruction should start. And it's been awesome. Anyone who knows me knows I'll talk all day about it. I've loved it. I love that the district is getting on board. So I feel like, for me personally, I just feel like I have control of what I'm teaching my kids. I know that what I'm doing is making a difference. And I'm really excited to see kids who have started this in kindergarten, their teachers are changing their instruction, like how that's going to look in a couple of years. So I'm a big fan. Any questions for me?
I'm Julie Thompson. I'm the lead ASP teacher in the Wind Room at North Road. I just wanted to kind of roll back and maybe touch on some things that Karen said. Lexia letters training is based on the language acquisition, or the psycholinguistic acquisition of reading. It is based on a lot of brain research, so it is so different than a lot of the trainings we've received as teachers, because it is not teaching to a tool or a curriculum resource. It is teaching a philosophy of how to teach. So it is teaching you how to be very explicit and systematic in your teaching, which, if I'm honest, because my schedule is back to back, one group, grade level after another in that Wind Room, it has helped me to really identify the sub-skills or the substrates that these kids need out of those 5 pillars of literacy, and really be able to hone in on those and kind of do shifts and make tweaks according to the needs in the building at each grade level. So I do my own progress monitoring and my own data dig to see where the kids are at, and then I'm able to structure groups based on what the kids need, which is what the Wind Room is all about. So with that being said, like, I feel like that I have been better at my use of time and being able to be more explicit and more systematic in my instruction, and really addressing the needs of the students as a whole. This is a huge shift that we're going, and I do believe it's going to take time. Not all of our teachers have been trained yet, but also a lot of our assessment tools have changed. So where we moved away from using DRA, we are now using Acadians, which is a totally different benchmark or extensive benchmark assessment. Looking at that or thinking about that, the kids need time to get used to it. It's a 1-minute probe. It's at the end of the year grade level. There is no picture support. It's a cold read. So they really, really have to know what they're doing when it comes to looking at print and being able to decode print, to be able to read it fluently. And also, like Steph was touching on, the 4th and 5th graders, being able to speak about what they've read and talk about what they've read as far as their comprehension. I am thrilled that we have this training, that we're moving in this direction. My previous background is speech pathology, so I feel a little bit vindicated. Like, a lot of the things that I learned previous to, before becoming an elementary teacher is really coming back to the forefront with that phonemic awareness, really building that phonics early on in those foundational skills. I'm seeing a little bit of a shift in the numbers in the WIN room. Lower numbers in K1 because they're starting to get this good instruction. So that is a very encouraging. I think our numbers are high at different grade levels because those students really did miss out on some of those foundational skills in their trajectory. But yeah.
So yeah, the kindergarten, and just to reiterate, the kindergarten and the first grade students, this is all they've known. This instruction, this reading instruction is all they've known, unless their parents tried to teach them or something. So it's going to take a little bit longer for the higher grades to kind of catch up.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, Nate Gatlin, principal at Tomek. I'm going to follow the same pattern as North Road kind of started us with. So I'll talk to our data, give some insights, and then I have Christy Horst here to share some the teacher side of things, right? And the training that she's done and how that's kind of impacted what she does in the classroom. On our data, overall, our upper grades actually look pretty strong. Grades 3 to 5 demonstrate pretty strong proficiency. That's a success we can build on and continue to try and improve there. Lower grades need some focus. We've drilled down in our talks with ASP and just intervention groups and things. We've talked about a struggle. This is actually, Kaz was a part of this in the instructional coaching side of things too. Struggle with letter naming fluency particularly. So that's something we're working on in the kindergarten groupings. Grade 2 has showed as kind of a turning point. So slight improvement, potential application for the earlier grades to kind of bridge the gap. Grade specific, we have, I already touched on more below and well below than we want in kindergarten, but we've kind of identified the main, hopefully the main culprit in that letter naming fluency to work on and fill those holes. In grades 3 to 5, we want to continue to share best practices when they're applicable with the lower grades and offering enrichment. Some of the things that came out of WIN meetings today, a rewards program, and not rewards like giving it a reward, but actually a reading program that they use for grouping within the 4th grade classrooms and during WIN time. Number corner checkup, happy numbers, and reflex math to kind of work on interventions in those areas. And then next steps, we want to pinpoint the skill gaps using the data from Acadians. Obviously NWEA and happy numbers, things, every tool that we have at our disposal. And continue to investigate causes, look at what interventions have been tried, whether that intervention is working, and then move on to either continue to use the ones that are working or move on to the next that may work better. And then another next step is just to intervene and support part of that. The WIN meetings that I mentioned, we had our first round today with the upper grades. Actually, it wasn't just upper grades. We had 2nd, we had 4th, and we had 5th today. So the remaining grade WIN meetings will happen tomorrow, looking at all those things that we're doing to support kids and get these data points to where we want them and to show growth for all our students. Really just to wrap it up, solutions focused, trying to continuously improve and show growth, and then that kind of leads into Christy bringing in her perspective from the teacher side of things. Thank you.
I am Christy Horst. I'm a 4th grade teacher at Tomek. So I went through the Spire training, and I also took a course with Anita Archer on explicit teaching. And I just want to share with you how it's transformed my teaching practices and, more importantly, my students' learning experiences. Learning is deeply rooted in the science of reading. The Spire training equipped me with foundational knowledge and practical strategies to use with my students. And through explicit instruction, I directly teach new skills, allowing time for the students to practice and master each step. And each new concept is based on prior knowledge, which is essential for literacy development. So I'm grateful to share these opportunities with you and advocate for the continued support and training of structured literacy practices based on the science of reading.
Good afternoon, Craig Salter, principal at State Road Elementary School. So just kind of briefly looking at our winter Acadians data, which is now a couple weeks old. Just kind of a quick glance I think, Stephanie and Nate both touched on it. This is, looking at some of our strong foundational skills in our reading students. So it's a positive when you see K1-2 having some of the strongest scores out of the building on that, because that, as we know, is the most, the area where you want the kids to have the reading foundation. If you don't have that foundation in reading, decoding, fluency, those areas, then as they progress, they get into the higher grades when they have to now start applying those in not only reading, but then understanding, comprehending what they're reading. The struggle becomes that much more difficult for them, and that gap becomes much harder to kind of bridge. So I was pleased when I saw those scores. I will share, obviously, looking at that, third grade does kind of stand out. We just had our WIN meetings yesterday and today, and we sat with third grade, and we probably had about an hour-long conversation with them about it. And so some of the uncoverings that they have discovered is, one, that there's kind of their two areas. Their oral reading fluency for some kids is still low, so they have developed a plan during the WIN time, whether it's in the intervention room or in the classroom, to kind of target and attack those areas for those students. The other area that they had spoken to was a comprehension, and some students were lacking. And so in discussion with them, they said, because, K2, it's kind of learning those foundational skills. You're kind of reading to read. And then third grade is that big jump where you're reading to learn. And that's where the comprehensional piece comes in. And so actually, and they have not done it yet in the WIN room itself. This is the first, chunk of time. Like 6-week blocks of time we typically run interventions for. They're creating a comprehension group for students that are going down to the intervention room, because that's been an identified area of kids. They've had enough of them where they can build that. And then teachers in the classroom, they're going to start using the phonics to read intervention, which is a 3-5 intervention program. It was K2 previously, K3 was just more of the phonics basis. Is kind of more incorporating that comprehensional aspect to it to kind of stretch their thinking. And looking at grade 4, and the other part I wanted to share with that third grade is, I don't want to say they're the unfortunate ones, because they're all fortunate to be here, and they're fortunate that, their teachers and staff, we can sit through and have hour-long conversations about the data to correct what they're doing to help those students. But those students, we can't go back and reverse time and start teaching the way we're teaching reading 2 years ago now. So that's our kind of mission, is to identify that grade level. What can we do to help those kids? And I left that meeting at 3:30 today with third grade. I felt very, positive in really looking at, when we get to the springtime, what are our scores going to look like for third grade when it comes to the Acadians testing. Fourth grade, one thing that, in speaking with that grade level, was they want to start, I don't want to say getting away from technology, but we're putting all this technology in front of students, and I think we're starting to kind of see that pendulum swing back to where we want to get a little bit more paper pencil back in front of them, that physical aspect of writing, rather than just typing. So some of those skills was kind of their focus. In looking at fifth grade, I will say that's probably some of the product of what the fifth grade teachers are doing during WIN time. Like the way that they switch the kids in their intervention groups with their classroom. I think is definitely a tremendous bonus for that grade level of kids. Plus, we also have kids going to enrichment for 3-5, where we had kids scoring at the top, and then they're now going to enrichment to kind of expand that higher level thinking, I guess you could say, with those students. And in talking with grade levels in our WIN meetings, those students were kind of taking, previously, first half of the year was a little bit more project-based. So now we're taking a project-based and adding a deeper writing component to it. So adding some more specific skills, some kind of depth of knowledge questions to get them thinking deeper, to get them writing better and applying those skills to the project that they've been working on. So it's great to see what those kids are producing, but it's going to be even better when we can actually have, tying it back to those direct skills that they'll be doing in the classroom and just expanding it, which is ultimately the idea for that enrichment program. A couple other things I will share for our next steps. One, and this is all kind of, stemming from teacher ideas, is they wanted to have a a bank of master lists, a bank of win strategy ideas that grade levels are doing in their classrooms, because you only know what you know, and if you don't see it, you don't talk about it, you don't know whether to try it or not. So they want to have a list of what are different ideas and strategies they could use in their classroom. So that kind of stemmed from the last 2 days meeting, so that should be here by the time we meet back again in March. We should have a bigger list. We started it today, but that should be growing. Instructional coaches, they set up calendars now where they've sent it out to the teachers teachers can sign up with them to quickly meet with them so they can, talk about what supports that teacher might need in the classroom, because it's very tough on the teachers in the classroom. They've got 22 kids in there, multiple varying skills and different strategies they have to use on different ones. So it's a lot kind of compressed into 2 30-minute chunks of time. So the more supports we can push at them, the more comfortable those teachers are going to feel to grow our kids. And then the last one, doesn't tie into with this so much, but more of the math in a way does with this, is a concept quest that our 2nd through 5th grade students are doing. Kind of more of I guess you could say like a project type thing where they're applicational skills. I guess that's a better way to put it. Taking those skills and applying it, some more depth of knowledge to it. So again, kind of not so much kids in enrichment, but kids in the classroom, maybe at the higher ends, kind of pushing them along with some of those concept quests. So that was our winter data. And the one extra thing I guess I could say is that in looking, the correlation from the Acadian scores is very similar to what the NWA scores are as well. I know we typically present to you NWA scores, took a little different route with this one, but they do very, very similar if you were to plot them down and overlay them.
Okay, so to wrap up, I just want to highlight the fact that this is obviously a little bit of a different data presentation than we've done in the past, but we wanted to share data, but also kind of the whole picture of how we got to that data and what that data is showing and telling us. So if you were on the teaching and learning committee, you've been hearing about this shift to the science of reading for a long time, and you're probably like, okay, this feels like it's been going on for a long time. But the shift takes a long time, because not only changing as teachers how we believe that kids learn to read and really developing those skills in all of us, but also aligning the resources and the assessments and all of those pieces together takes time. And we have put some new resources into place as far as decodables and UFly, but there's still other resources that we need to shift and change. One data point that they did not bring up is when you break into that data, at most grade levels, you see a real strong increase from last spring till now with cohorts of students in phonics skills, which is the area that we have had the most focus and our teachers are most comfortable with right now. So as we continue to build their knowledge in the other areas of the reading rope, those areas will start to go up as well, which will increase our overall proficiency levels. Any questions for me or gentlemen?
Go ahead. I have a couple. I have one data question, and I have a couple questions about the grants. So I don't know who answers what, but for the data, my understanding just from having a student is there is a difference between the WIN room and then special education in reading. So I'm wondering, does this data reflect everybody, and are the special education students getting obviously different instruction, more hands-on, et cetera, but is it the same program for all?
So the data that was represented reflects all students within that grade level. Yeah, okay. So special education students are included in that data. An intervention for the whether it's the WIN room or the resource room is differentiated based on students. So there are different resources that are used for one kid versus another student in the WIN room or in special education based on skills.
But all classes are using the science of reading. It's just a matter of who's at what level. Correct. Based on their individual. So it's very individualized. Yes. That's what I thought based on my own experience, but I wanted to kind of say that.
And again, some of our teachers, like the ones here, have completed that 2-year training. Others started this fall.
Right.
So there's different levels of knowledge and implementation.
I'm all behind this program, by the way. I don't want you to think I'm.
No, I don't think that at all.
But then I do have some general questions, which I don't know if it should be part of this conversation or a budget conversation, but with the grants, are they state or federal grants?
Those are state grants.
Okay, good. That's the last question.
Yes, those ones are all state grants.
Melissa, how often will we see that data?
We do the Acadians assessment 3 times a year, so the beginning of the year, mid-year, and end of the year.
Can
If
I
you
make
would
a
like to
suggestion?
continue to see.
Yeah, when you
more
do
of
it
them.
next time, can, or anything in the future, can we put them side by side so that we can see
Yes,
that?
we just, at this time, we didn't really have data to show a comparison because
Sure.
we did start it last year, but really that was kind of a year of learning how to give the assessment and kids to get it. But yeah, absolutely, we can show
I
those
would
growth.
assume that it's like anything else, you're gonna run into groups where you have certain groups me being part of that group that struggles a little more. I was
Absolutely.
dyslexic growing up through, all through school, and so struggled mightily. And just being able to track that and be able to give them the extra attention, and then for the teachers, obviously, down the line, that will see what's coming and what, where maybe that extra effort will come. But there's a lot of, I know that the conversation takes place amongst the teachers, especially within the buildings, so they all, I can really appreciate the ones that got up tonight and really talked about how they saw this coming down the pipeline and interacted, ahead of time to really try to stem some of the issues that they were gonna,
Absolutely.
be thrown upon in this. So I appreciate that, but I'd love to be able to see side-by-side data that, in the future that'll show us that growth in there. That'd be great.
For sure.
After my grilling, I just want to say something positive, and it kind of piggybacks off of what you said, Matt, is I have a student in one of those highly affected grades, and he's in the higher level of the grades now, and he's behind. And whatever was going on the first couple years wasn't helping him in the same way that this is. So I know data is more than one student, but I have an example of one student who has greatly benefited from this program. So thank you all.
Yeah, that's great.
I had some questions too. I also thought it would be very helpful to have that comparative data. And then I think you just answered one of my questions, was how long ago did we switch to Acadians? And that was a switch from DRA to Acadians, right?
Correct, and we did that last school year. So we've had one, last year we did Acadians, and then this is our second year.
So, yeah, it would be interesting to follow certain grade levels. That's kind of what I was thinking over the years, but if it was different tests, I don't really think you can compare.
Yeah, that's normally what we do. We look, like when we were using DRA or NWEA, we look at those trends and those groups of kids. But when we first started Acadians, we administered it a couple of different ways until we had that consistency. We just didn't feel that it was an equitable comparison.
Yeah, I agree. Then I was just looking at some of the data where you have a grade level it looks like half of them are, okay. Yeah, so if we look at like 3rd grade here, and, we're dealing with more than 50%, I'm just curious, in the intervention program, how many of those students that are below are actually being serviced?
Right. And your meeting today,
There were, in that grade level, I think there was 8, but we ended up with, I think we're closer to 14 because we added that comprehensional piece to it. So, I think we're taking, some of those students that are maybe a little closer to the red, we're now servicing far over more into the yellow, especially with the numbers like that. We typically service, Julie, about 15 kids roughly per grade level at a time?
16, we do go over. There's other spaces for open support. So say a grade level is flooded, and you can structure groups many different ways. We've been very creative in that. Our cutoff score, where we start looking, is 40% or below. 50% is really looking at being more in that proficient range. But we are not opposed. Like right now, I know Dana at State Road, Maria at Tomek, and myself we have kids that, we got 2 groups in that room that are between the 40 and 50 range. We take them, we call them the bubblers. And historically, like when you provide intervention to that cohort or that sect that's just kind of approaching the target, you get a lot more movement with them because they have less gaps to fill and remediate.
I just want to clarify too something that I think is important that you just kind of both of you touched upon. That score, that blue, is where they should be at the end of that particular school year.
Right.
Right? So when you think about it, we have a good 4 months left in the school year to get a lot of those kids into the blue, right? So that we have 50% of 5th grade that's already at the end of the school year mark. So I think sometimes when people say, ooh, 50%, they're not doing well. Really, when you think about it, 50% at the end of the school year mark.
Well, and also the Acadians is structured to be grade level text. It is not dumbed down. There's no picture support, and it is a 1-minute quote. You got it or you don't. So you're looking at an assessment where they are trying to read and show proficiency of where they need to be at the end of the year.
I also think to add to that is even if we have more students, which eventually once we are fully implemented and trained, the hope is you don't, right? But because of the WIN model, that students might not go to the intervention room, but those highly skilled classroom teachers are running intervention groups in their classroom. So even if they're not getting support from somebody in the intervention room, they're getting that extra support in the classroom.
That was my next question.
Yeah.
I assume that could happen in the way that probably our WIN services are set up.
Every kid's a winner.
And we're working really hard to make sure that at those 6 to 8 week meetings that are happening with talking about data and students, that teacher teams have enough time to plan and group students for the next 8 weeks in their classroom. So we're not just talking about our students that are going to intervention, but we're talking about how we're meeting the needs of all students within that time.
Does enrichment happen at the same time that WIN and intervention? Okay,
Correct.
so that's where a kid then can go, depending upon what they need.
Right.
So you just answered my other question then, and then I just want to say I love the idea that you're creating a bank of effective strategies, because I think we can all learn from each other, and teachers sometimes get in their little own bubble and and so I think that's a great idea. I just wanted to.
I won't take any credit for it. That was all from the team. I'm just relaying that information.
I can hear your enthusiasm. How does this affect, or how are the kids responding to this new way of learning? I mean, I'm assuming it's all positive.
I feel like, especially for the kiddos that have struggled, they finally feel successful because we're meeting them exactly where they're at and where we need to meet them. So instead of just kind of floundering around and trying to, it's like they are feeling the success. And we're focusing more on like the decoding skills and putting books in their hands, like the decodables that they can actually read instead of relying on the picture or things like that. So I feel like, at least in my experience, the kids are feeling successful, which then just makes them even more into it, which is great.
And a lot of the instructional practices are predictable routines. So the students learn that routine and they know what to expect. When they're working on, their phonics lesson, even though it's a different concept, they know exactly the order of what they're doing to learn and work with those sounds.
And then when they're in the intervention, how much time do they get?
So our WIN time is set up for 30 minutes a day, 4 days a week for reading, and then 30 minutes a day, 4 days a week for math for K3. And then 4 and 5 have, depending, between 35 and 40 minutes 4 times a week for the 2 subjects combined.
And then can you explain the Acadians?
Yes. So I can try to explain it a little bit to you, but it's an assessment that tests all different areas of skills necessary for reading. So there are different pieces to that assessment, and some of it's depending on the grade level. So some of it is nonsense word fluency, being able to identify letters and sounds. There's a reading portion where they're given a grade level text where they read and it's timed how many errors they make and how many words they can read. There's multiple pieces that are scored and then they go together into a composite score. So it's looking at all of the different skills necessary for proficient reading.
So how long before we have all the teachers trained?
Well, everybody's in the process of being trained,
they're all
as well
using
as the
Acadians.
administrators.
They're
all using
yeah.
Acadians.
Yeah.
And they all have had the 3 days of training that we did early last year. The letters training takes 2 years. Even the administrator training, you can ask Heidi, I did it on a little bit of a speed course. I pushed through and went into makeup sessions. And for 3 weeks, from 5 to 8 every night, I was on Zoom. 3 nights a week for 3 weeks. And that's just the administrator part. The teacher part is twice as much as that. So it's set over 2 years. But we're continuing to work. I'm looking at trying to get some other professional learning opportunities. You heard Anita Archer mentioned. I'm hoping, crossing my fingers, I'm trying to get her to come to district for explicit instruction to give not only our elementary teachers, but middle and high school, if they're interested, opportunities for that too. So we're continuing to work on it. And hopefully the 35 M and N grants, if we qualify and receive them, will help us with some of our instructional materials, because that's another area that's really expensive, is changing your instructional materials. Any other questions?
Melissa, you can speak more on this later too. We don't have to spend a ton of time, but I was just thinking this shift sets us up so well as a district compared to others too, with the new dyslexia law that's coming. Could you just kind of share a little bit?
For sure. So we started on this path because of the reasons that we talked about, what we were seeing in data a couple of years ago. Well, in December, there was this dyslexia law passed in Michigan, and there are lots of requirements over the next 3 or 4 years within that law. And districts around Genesee County, around Livingston, Oakland County are scrambling. They're saying, how are we getting our teachers trained in letters? How are we doing this? And Heidi can just sit back and smile at her meetings because we've already gone through that process. And a big piece of it, honestly, is that letters training is so intense that you have to pay people to do it outside. We gave people the option. They could do it outside of the school day, or we would sub them out of their classroom. But most teachers aren't interested in being subbed out of their classroom 16 days in 2 years. And so you have to be able to provide them a decent stipend. And people who didn't go for that 35J grant are now, how are we going to pay our staff to be able to go through that, get that training? So a lot of these pieces are that we've done have set us up really nicely for not only meeting the requirements of the law, but one of the grants I mentioned is a competitive grant, and they're looking for districts to be, they're looking to fund districts to try things out, to be innovative and model districts for the others in the state as they have these requirements. And that's one I think we're set up really well. I don't know if we'll get it, but to apply for, because we do have a lot of the prior work done. We can talk more about all of the requirements. It's a very long document, which ones we've met, but we're in a good spot.
No, that was helpful just to let everyone know.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Melissa or any of our presenters?
Sounds exciting.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Redmond.
All right, thank you.
AGS.
AGS. Good evening, members of the board, Superintendent Soselsky, Isabel Hunter, and always good to see you guys. I first have to start off by apologizing to Mr. Salter. I think he didn't get the memo of the blue white jackets. Doug,
we'll talk tomorrow.
I think that's sending that memo out. It was completely coincidental. Kind of funny nonetheless. So I'm Eric Redmond, principal of AGS. I'm here to talk about, it says fall data up there because I think we were originally going to present this in November, but I'm happy to present this in February because we just recently, our NWA scores are fresh, hot off the press from January. This presentation is a little bit different from elementary. It probably has a little bit more of a secondary feel. We're really lucky at AGS because we have the M-STEP, a proficiency modeled standardized testing. We have the PSAT, which is a growth model, and we have NWEA, which is our progress monitoring tool the students take at 3 points during the school year. So you'll see this data reflected. What you're going to see first is our M-STEP and PSAT data from last year. They are grade level cohorts and subject area. We always, as educators, love to compare ourselves with other districts in the county. I think when we get this data, it's the first thing we jump to. You can see the royal blue color in all of these, this slide and the next slides have the GISD, the county-wide proficiency or averaged at 32% in this case. You'll see the statewide at 38%, and you see Fenton, which this is our 6th grade ELA, up there at second in the county at 50% proficiency. So that's the pattern you'll see in the next several slides. By comparison, we've got 6th grade math, still top 5 in the county, and still well above the county and statewide bar. 7th grade ELA, you can see we're at state level, but above the Genesee County level. 7th grade math, we're above the statewide level there, quite a bit above the county level, and still right up there in the top of the county. We have 8th grade. This is certainly a point of pride here, and I hold in high regard the PSAT over the M-STEP. It's such a better indicator as to where our students are now and where they're going to be in the future. But if you look at our 8th grade ELA, we far surpassed statewide and county-wide benchmarks. And not only that, but we were tops in the county at 81%. I think that's a huge point of pride for middle school. We've got our math, or our PSAT math, again, right up there at the top. We'll have to find out if we know somebody in Linden what's going on there. But again, we are surpassing the statewide and far surpassing the countywide proficiency marks, and still right up there at the top of the county with our PSAT scores.
Can I interject here?
Yes.
Real quick? I would just like to kind of let people know in the audience and let the board know, as a classroom teacher, if only 38% of my students passed an assessment, typically I would think that that's the assessment or it's something that I had done, and we would revisit
Sure.
that situation.
Yeah.
So it is always irksome to me when I see that we have, go back to the M-STEP, PSAT is a nationally normed test, so I'm not so mad about that. But when you go back to the M-STEP and see that only 33% is the top score in the county are passing
Right.
that test, there's
Yeah.
something wrong.
Yeah, with
the
tests, correct.
Yeah,
38% statewide, yeah, I mean.
And that's been at a superintendent level, that has been our focus this school year as superintendents is looking at our countywide data, looking at who is doing well, who's not doing well, what are they using, what are they not using, and then really advocating for some change when it comes to state assessment. That's kind of where we're at.
When you look at the historical data that we see sometimes at our principal meetings, even from year to year, it's like a scatter plot with the M-STEP, and it's truly evidence that test changes so often from year to year as to what what the benchmarks are, what the proficiency numbers are, and what the content is with the M-STEP. It has changed. It changes significantly over the years, and by grade level, by subject level. That's why, to Heidi's point, I do look at the PSAT data, and it's much more near and dear to our hearts than the M-STEP data. But when you look at that by comparison with the county and statewide scores and countywide scores, it at least shows you where we sit in comparison to others.
I don't want to interrupt if you're getting there, but
No, you're fine.
Do we know what the national average for the PSAT was?
I'm not 100% sure what the national average is, and it is not.
I just
we
figured
can
we
find
just
that out.
follow
Hard
around.
to get a national average for
not all
PSAT or SAT because not all states require everyone to take.
Right, because there's also the ACT.
Yeah.
And we did try a couple of years to dig in and like identify the states that require it, and it was, we
probably
can
not
try to
worth
do
it.
that again, but it was really hard to
Yeah.
find equitable.
I was just curious if you know. Thank you. Yeah.
This is our NWA building-wide. This is our MAP growth for ELA and reading. If you take a look at this data, we were able to because we just finished in January. I'm pretty proud of what the students did because the STEM step window was right in the middle of our snow days. So we had lots of making up to do and some interruption there. But if you look at building wide, 73% proficient. It's the dark green, or the light green all the way through the dark green is the proficient. You see that green area getting wider, and the yellow and the red area is getting a little narrower at the bottom. So those students are certainly moving up. I think the January 24th, this is from Panorama, so when you hover over it, it gives you I think it was 47%. I don't think it's going to do it on here, but the far left, light green to dark green, was 47%, January of 2024, and the percentage all the way to the far right, the light green to dark green, is 73%. So that's a significant growth in our NWEA, our progress money for a year. Next is math. Again, you'll see some of the same patterns, maybe not quite as high of proficiency, but I think it was the far left was at 47% in January 2024, and now you're seeing a 69% from light green to dark green on the far right. Again, you see the band, the green band widening out, and the yellow and red bands narrowing the gap there. This data. I think when we look at this, and the next slide will show, I think there you go. If you look at our data by the numbers, 99 students have intervention plans through data dialogue. We had 82 last year. Students receiving intervention class is up to 70 as opposed to 40. Students serviced by Easter seals, we had 12 last year, and we are 30 plus this year. I say all that because the interventions that we have continued to put into place at the middle school, ELA intervention classes, math intervention classes, having an interventionist on staff, instructional coaches, our SEL, I really attribute us hitting our stride with working so closely with our at-risk population, our SEL population. I commend Heidi and Doug and Melissa and this board for not only putting monetary resources in place as far as curriculum and training for our staff, but human resources. I can't tell you how much these numbers are increasing because we have people working individually with students at the building level. We have intervention classes, we have skills classes for our special education students. We have co-talk classes for our special education students. Moving forward, how do we improve upon this? Obviously continue to do what we're doing, but I'm really excited at the secondary level about the upcoming work with our MTSS plan at the secondary level. I really, the What I Need model from the elementary, we're looking at targeted interventions on a secondary level that we're going to be able to meet students where they're at in small groups. On the flip side of that, and Renee, you mentioned that, the enrichment is also another piece. At the middle school, you can see here, I'll sort of get to this in a second, but we also have our algebra, geometry courses. We have our credit forward courses, Spanish, French. So we have some higher level challenging courses too to challenge some of our kids, but That's a whole other area to look at with the MTSS model, looking at where do we meet students where they're at all levels, whether it's at risk, students with an IEP, also students that need to be challenged with enrichment. So I'm really excited about the work that we're about to embark on with our MTSS, not only from a behavior standpoint, from an academic standpoint, the work that Melissa's doing with the assessment teams and the priority standards to cut the gap vertically, to see where we are really honing in on, when you go back to the MSTEP data, like 7th grade ELA, why are we, we're still looking okay from the county standpoint, but why are we just meeting the statewide standard? Maybe hitting to those in those priority standards and grade level, to make sure everybody is teaching what they need to teach with fidelity. That stuff moving forward is going to be really important work, and I'm really excited about that. The next couple of slides, I would love to put our engagement stuff in there because, I'm a huge believer in involvement and engagement, especially at the secondary level with our kiddos. Kids that are involved are staying out of trouble, staying out of my office, and usually are doing better academically. So when you look at this, our fall, winter, spring athletes, spring is obviously that number might change, but right now that's what's in final forms. You can see we have 170 student athletes this fall, 152 in the winter, 173 projected for the spring. Our credit forward courses, we have 24 students in geometry, 96 in algebra, 302 students taking, that's 7th grade and 8th grade taking Spanish. That's the equivalent of Spanish 1, 24 in French 1. We have a student that goes to the high school for Algebra 2 and a student that goes to the high school for Spanish 2. AGS band and choir and drama or fine arts, you can see is very robust, 176 students in band, 142 in choir, 135 in drama. I think probably 705 are involved in drama at the middle school. AGS robotics, we got the crew right behind us. And these numbers, they ended last year ranked first in Michigan, I believe 21st in the world, about 26 students participating. It's a huge point of pride for our middle school and high school, and I know that crew is right behind me waiting to get up here. Last slide, we have our leadership council, which is an inclusive group that any student can join. We currently have 50 members. We have a Harry Potter club at the middle school, which is really fun. I am not a Harry Potter, I don't dislike Harry Potter, but I'm not a Harry Potter fan, but I love going in there and they sit in their little houses and eat Harry Potter food and have their wands. We have an AGS Builders Club. They met today. This is our service learning arm of AGS. It's a part of the Kiwanis Club. And they are looking at, they did a Halloween event, and they're looking for a winter event and then a spring event. There's about 20, probably over that. Now we had about 25 kids show up tonight. So that is what is going on at AGS Middle School. And soon, President Ross Messer will have the pickleball club on there. Emily's daughter and one of her classmates are just started a pickleball club. February 24th, I think, is our first date. I'm looking forward. I've been practicing. So we're really excited about that. So, and Ashley.
I just have one question this
Of course.
time. Is there, I know we've just recently, in recent times, increased our SEL programming,
Yes.
but are we in the process of collecting any data on how that type of intervention is helping those specific students?
Yeah, I should have mentioned our data dialogues, which are quarterly. Deb Chapman, our instructional coach, has done a phenomenal job of really digging deep into data for, that's when we have our teachers come in, we have set times and they come in and we discuss what students need, what our teachers are. It's really, going back to the days of teaming, I was very fortunate to teach at AGS when we had teaming, when we all, the 4 core teachers and a special ed teacher shared 120 students. We did that all the time. And now that we're more of a traditional sort of junior high schedule, and you've got kids sharing 6 different teachers, the data dialogues allow our staff to come in and they don't always get the opportunity to talk about the same things they're seeing from certain students.
Right.
So that has been huge, not only for our academics, not only for correcting behaviors, but it's been very impactful for SEL.
So that way we know that SEL is doing benefits not only to the emotional side, but also the academic side.
100%, yeah.
Obviously both are important.
Yes.
There's also a survey that we started at elementary that will be happening at the middle and high school within Panorama, which you saw some great clips. I love those Panorama clips of NWBA.
Yes, that was from
Those were very nice. But there's a survey piece to that where you can create surveys about students, that they fill out about their grit, how they're feeling, are they connected at school? And then it shows up in that platform too. And it worked out really nicely at the elementary. Your kiddo might have taken one. You probably got a letter home about it.
I think we did it.
But that'll be another component that'll help us see the trend and the growth with that SEL component.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
Yeah, the other thing I just wanted to add, and Eric hit on a bunch of these, obviously we talked for a long time about all the work that was happening at elementary, but there's just as much work happening at the middle and high school. He talked about that MTSS focus. We as a district and their teachers at both AGS and FHS are focusing on MTSS and what that looks like in a secondary setting. They've traveled with me, they've gone to conferences. We have more people going to another conference, giving up some of their own time to attend these trainings, and they've created a guiding coalition between the two buildings of over 22 staff members that applied to be on that team to guide and lead that work towards implementation of MTSS, being able to provide those interventions, enrichment opportunities, and supports to our students. So they are doing a ton of work in that area. And the other thing that Eric also mentioned was the assessment team. So they seem a little bit detached, but those two initiatives are really aligned close together, and they're both within the strategic plan. But the assessment team has worked really hard building their understanding of assessment, and that first comes down to understanding what we're teaching, and then we're all teaching and focusing on the same pieces. And within the Common Core standards for the state of Michigan, I think they said it would take, if you were going to teach all of the standards K-12, like 22 years to teach that. So unless we're going to change the amount of time our students are in K-12 education, we have to pare that down a little bit. And so our entire staffs have gone through the process of identifying priority standards. Not saying that we aren't teaching the rest, but they've made an agreement that those priority standards at their grade level every student coming out of that grade level is going to show proficiency and mastery in those standards. So that also helps us streamline and know our focus for intervention, because our intervention isn't just anything you're not getting. Our intervention supports are based on those priority standards. So that work is continuing along with building the guaranteed viable curriculum, and it all kind of dovetails together. So they're doing a ton of work too. I didn't want you to think that we talked for an hour about elementary, but there's a lot of celebrations at the middle school as well.
Yeah. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, 5.2, honoring retiree Pam Lucas.
Yes, and I will do it from here because Pam, if anybody knows Pam Lucas, she's not going to show up to be honored, that's for sure. Pam Lucas has given us 30 years of her professional life to our district. She drives a bus. She is a new name. She will take tickets at games. She will do, many of you have probably seen Pam in multiple roles across our district. She is a great lady and well-deserved that she gets to kind of hang up the gloves and no longer spend a ton of time with us and spend time with her family and are retired. She'll get a small kind of token that we have always given kind of our retirees, but we wanted to honor her just because she will be done at the end of February. So she'll get to kind of be retired and enjoy that life. So I wanted to honor her. She called me and she said, you know I'm not going to come. So I said, I know that, but I just wanted to make sure I publicly recognize her because she has given a lot to us. So that's it.
Congratulations to her. All right, the moment we've been waiting for.
Or at least a large portion of it.
I think they're excited to get up here.
Members of the board, thank you so much for giving us time to come in and talk to you today about robotics. It's been a little bit since we've been in. And so I wanted to give you just a quick update before I let the kids get up here and really steal the show. My name is Heidi Ritchie, and I am head of Fenton Robotics, which 3 years ago would have meant that I was leading 5 different teams in Fenton. And I want to tell you that there has been an increased growth and interest in robotics here in Fenton, partially due to the successes that the teams that we started with 3 years ago are really showing in statewide and actually even nationwide and internationally. So right now, Fenton Robotics is a family of 12 teams. We have added teams all the way down from kindergarten through 12th grade. So we have after-school competitive programming that is largely volunteer run here in Fenton. And I'm confident that right now we are at our limits, both in space and time and mentorship. So I think we are going to really take these 12 teams and improve them the best that we can and really show you some amazing stuff in the next few years. So right now I have 2 teams at the kindergarten and 1st grade level. I have 4 teams at the 2nd and 3rd grade level. I have 3 teams that are competing at middle school level. However, there's an asterisk by that, and I'm going to go back to that. And then I have 1 high school team. And as long as we only have 1 high school in Fenton, we will have only 1 high school team because these teams are limited by size. How many teams I'm allowed to, students I'm allowed to have in each team based on FIRST Robotics rules. And that is the overarching component that we're part of is FIRST Robotics, standing for inspiration and recognition of science and technology. So I'm putting that asterisk there. I've really brought you the middle school teams today. Because I want to showcase what we've done with them, but also because the high school team is really, really busy right now in the middle of their competitive season. We're going to have our first competition coming up in March, and they're very busy right now putting together that robot. So my middle school teams, I had told you there was an asterisk by it. I have for you today 5 middle schoolers and 2 elementary students that are representing a team, because I have 2 middle school teams that are competing at middle school level with middle school students. But this year we decided to try something new. And I want to point out to you that in the world of robotics, and especially in the world of Michigan robotics, which is the largest district of FIRST Robotics, that Fenton has something that nobody else in Michigan has. And that is the fact that we are running our robotics program as a family. We are under one roof. We are, we are fundraising together. We are doing outreach and STEM together. We are mentoring top down from high school all the way down through. I have high schoolers that are mentoring middle schoolers and all the way down. And that is something that nowhere else you will find in the state of Michigan is a family of teams running as one conjoined Fenton Robotics. Like, you won't find that anywhere else. And so that's something that's really special here in Fenton, and we really need to celebrate. So we decided we're going to try something new. We're going to differentiate a little bit for some certain students that were in a different position. So I'm going to have my 2 middle school teams up here, but I'm also going to bring what we are calling our FTC junior team, made up of 4th and 5th graders here in Fenton that competed against middle schoolers following middle school rules this year. And so that was an interesting thing. We put them in one competition thinking that they could, get their feet wet. They're going to talk a little bit about the differences in the robots, but they competed in one competition, and that was our big hope for them. They compete in one competition and have that experience. They exceeded, did very well, and found themselves at the state competition along with the other 2 teams. So it was a very unique situation this year. We're very proud of how all of our teams done. And without any more ado, one of our coaches, Jen Zapp, is going to come on up and bring the kids to share really their successes with you.
I would like to thank you all for inviting us here today. I'm just going to get right to the kids because I think that's who you'd like to hear from. So if I could have Ashley and Cam first.
Hello everybody. I am Ashley. I'm a 7th grader at AGS Middle School, and I am also a participant at Fenton Robotics. I would like to share with you a little bit about our season, but mainly from me, about our outreach. So we do local and worldwide outreach. For local, we do some school stuff near us. So we do a Light Up the Night event, which is actually coming up. It'll be on February 14th. We have Clara's Hope Collection, and we also help out senior citizens with their tech needs at Vincinia Gardens. Worldwide outreach includes offering resources and information to rookie teams and forwarding them to other information if we aren't able to help them. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Camden, and I'm in 7th grade, and I'm a part of the Fenton Robotics program. So our season usually starts with a game reveal put up by First Robotics, and it just goes over the general premise of the season. So each season, the game changes, and every season they put out a game reveal, just going over what it is. It's like just rules and how to play the game. We all get together as a team. We watch that video, and we use the information from that video to help build our bot. And we also use designs from past seasons to help build our robot, which tends to help because some mechanisms that we use in past bots can also help with this season. So after we've got a general, like, what we want our bot to do, we would build our bot, and we tend to use CNC machined parts, laser cutted parts, and 3D printed parts. We all have access to those in our build room. So during our season, we face challenges. You know, that's like part of every season. You have some challenges, but we tend to overcome those challenges most of the time. One example is that at our first competition, one part of our bot broke, like right after our first match, but we came prepared. We always bring extra parts, and we were able to fix it before everything went bad. But yeah. So some of the roles that I played on the team were teaching people how to make buttons. So basically, well, actually, somebody will talk about the buttons, but so I helped people make buttons, and I was on the drive team as a human player. I just so I would put the game pieces in the arena, and the bot would pick it up.
Hi, my name is Alex. I'm part of the 4th and 5th grade team. CAD is a big part of robotics. It stands for Computer Aided Design. 26425, my team, we used all a kit bot. 19561 used a kit chassis and then parts from scratch, and 7643 used all CAD. 26425 is a rookie team. We were unique because we're 4th and 5th graders, yet also all of my team was a drive team, unlike 7643 or 19561. My favorite part of robotics was driving and making the bot.
My name is Grayson, and I'm in 7th grade at AGS team 19561. Normally, I'm sure it says it in the name, the biggest part of robotics one of the biggest part of the robotics is the robot. Normally, as Camden explained, the game is different every year, so I'm highly doubting that people just use the same robot every year. So most robots are unique with certain pieces and designs and subsystems to help play the game. Normally, these games have little scoring pieces that you can pick up, launch, like hang, set down certain places, and you get points. Robots have different pieces, such as intakes, which is pretty much like you pick it up with a wheel or something, like a broom and a dustpan. Claws, so they can pick up game pieces, kind of like a hand, and might sound a bit strange, but different wheel types, different drive types, help you with maneuverability around the field. Most robots do not actually it takes a while to get yourself on a robot you like. Our team, we went through a few different iterations. Our original one was just to have a robot with a giant arm that came out of the center and tried to reach in and grab stuff, but soon realized that that would not work in any way, shape, or form. The game itself, it has 3 different times. Auton, where coders like me code path, robot, moves, scores, all on its own for 30 seconds. 2-minute teleoperated period where drive team drives the robot around, scores, end game, which is pretty much just a 30-second teleop where you can keep scoring or you can hang off of whatever and get extra points. And when the season ends, most people will either upgrade their robots, fix their robots, or go to different competitions.
Hi, I'm Amelia. I'm in 8th grade, and I'm on Team 7643, the Tungsten Tigers. And I'm going to be talking about competition. So, my favorite part of competition is obviously driving because I'm on the drive team. But also, I really like to go around to other people's stands, get ideas from them, and meet new people. I'm a really social person, so I like to make friends at competitions. And I also really like talking to the judges and stuff, and presenting my speech. We won a lot of awards at our competitions. Like, we've got the Think Award here, and then this one is also Think Award. These were won by both of our middle school teams. And then this award is our design award. We won this for first place. It's extra fancy because it's a big deal for us. All of the awards are. And like Ms. Ritchie said in the very beginning, we had the opportunity to have all 3 of our teams, including the 4th and 5th grade team, at states with us, which is a really fun experience. We were all collaborating, going to each other's stands, borrowing parts, and checking on the teams if their parts broke. So that was really fun as well. And then one other thing would be the challenges we faced during competitions. Like, for example, our drive hub decided that it would stop working on our last match, and it didn't allow us to start the robot, so that was a really big problem. Luckily, the judges were able to pass some time for us to be able to fix it before the match started. We weren't so lucky at our last competition, like the one before that, because the same issue happened, but luckily we got it solved in time for our last competition of the season. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ava, I'm in 4th grade. I'm 10 years old and I go to State Road Elementary School. I'm on team 26425. Swag is a big deal at competition. Most teams love swag. Teams hand out 100 to 300 pieces of swag each competition. Most teams give buttons, but some teams had croc charms, 3D printed animals, roller bee keychains, tattoos, and necklaces. Each of our teams made several different button designs, giving each of us a chance to make a run. All the students made awesome swag. Swag sits on the pit tables and baskets for students to grab and take home. Another thing we designed are 3D pit awards to give to other teams. Some of the awards we made this year were coolest uniforms, fanciest robot, and best pit. We got funnest pit from another team at state. We would like to present you with the best school award for being awesome. Thank you for listening to our presentation. We are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yes, I just want to say you all did an awesome job. You know more about robots than I ever will, and some of you are only a year older than my son. So great work, and you're all excellent speakers. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought you guys were all about robotics, but you guys are public speakers. Excellent work. It's not easy to stand up in front of a bunch of adults, and you guys just really impressed me.
If you ever get to a competition, they do all of what they just demonstrated to you. They do all of that in every competition. So they not only have to speak publicly, but they have to talk about their designs. They have to, coordinate with other teams and get alliances. And it is a fascinating world if anybody's ever gone. Poor Heidi, every time I go to a competition, I'm like, now why are they doing that? And then she's got to explain it, and then she's got to try to coach at the same time. So
I fill her ear with lots of robotics when she's there. So robotics competitions are free to anyone. So if you ever want to attend a robotics competition, we can get you some information about that. We do have one coming up, I think it's the second weekend in March at Kettering. So it's a nice way to come and see our high school team as well. And we just really appreciate you letting us come in today. So thank you.
I do have one quick question. Because one of the kids mentioned it on there. So CNC machines, 3D printing.
Talk about that?
Do you yourself, do all of you have access and you are actually manning the machines and setting them up and programming them and then cutting out and doing everything that's needed to produce the parts yourselves?
Well, usually our coaches will actually operate the machines, but we as students, we will create the designs that go on the machines. So they operate it because it's safest for them to do it. They have the most experience. And they won't chop a finger off.
Rule number one.
So to kind of piggyback with what Camden is saying, as students grow through, they get more and more access as they get older in the shop. So we really do what is called we do, you watch, we do, you help, you do, we help, you do, we watch. And so that is going to be from kindergarten to 12th grade. There's gradations of that. And so if you walked into the shop today, yes, you would see high school students using the CNC machine unaided. You would see high school students milling and laser cutting. Middle schoolers are beginning to learn how to use a laser cutter. That's a little bit safer for them to use, but at any given time they could be using drill presses and lathes and things like that. So as they go through, and it really develops individually per student where they're at, and so we differentiate just like a teacher would. We differentiate based on their skill level, their interest. And as you notice, the kids talked about a wide variety of things. Amelia told you she's very social. She likes to talk to people. We have other people that do not love that. And so we grow students in a lot of different areas. We're pushing them to grow areas that maybe they are not as comfortable in, but all students have the opportunity to learn and access the tools and the things that they want to do if they want to try those things.
Fantastic progression in learning. That is absolutely awesome. And I will tell you, I have not been to one of the competitions. We've had the opportunity to go see you work. This was a couple of years ago over at your location over there. But I will tell you, I was up last year for a function for my son who played sports at Saginaw Valley, and a robotics function was taking place in the entire campus of Saginaw Valley. There were literally thousands and thousands, and I mean, there could have easily been tens of thousands of people there, because there was no parking to be had within miles of the campus. So it's awesome to see that.
That's high school state
Yeah.
competition.
Okay.
And so at that, there's thousands of people, you say, there's actually only 180 teams there out of the 550 that exist in Michigan of high school teams. And so looking just, I don't want to take away from our middle schoolers because they are really doing a very awesome job, but our high school finished 30th in the state out of 550 last year. And so again, the robotics program, we have really noticed that the growth, because we have this pipeline, kindergarten through 12th grade, really building a strong robotics program here. And so I know Mr. Rett presented 26 students at the middle school level, but what you have to understand is I have families, and this is entire families. Like the gentleman in the back here, stand up, Clarence. Clarence can speak a little bit to the family level of robotics. Go ahead, Clarence.
So I have, my oldest son is a sophomore this year on the high school robotics team. My middle son is on the 4th and 5th FTC junior team, and I also have my youngest son on the FLL Explore team, so First Lego League, which would be the kindergarten through 3rd program of First Robotics. So I've had the privilege and honor of coaching the 1st and 2nd grade teams to some capacity, but this year I focused more on the K1 teams as I've had other life experiences kind of take control of that. But like it's been explained, Fenton Robotics really is a whole family of teams. At any point you can reach out to a high school kid, a high school mentor, a middle school teacher, a middle school parent. Truth be told, I know very little about robots. Like if someone were to drop one in front of me, I'd be like, yep, you've got a robot there. But I love the kids, I love the atmosphere, and when I was presented with the opportunity to work with kids in Legos, I was like, Legos and kids, I can handle that part. So, thank you.
So, thank you very much again for your time today.
I'm sensing a long meeting tonight, so I'd like to make a motion for the 5:30.
All right, any support? Support. Okay, all in favor? All right. We will come back. Want to do it 5 minutes or just make it 6:35?
Sure.
6:35.
Take whatever you give me.
We're gonna take a, Dr. Bush, we're gonna
Yes,
take
ma'am.
a quick rest break.
That's what I've been told, no
Thank
problem.
you.
Got it?
Thanks, Mike.
You're afraid you lose a bunch of your audience today.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. I was at that actually the second night. I was at state last year. What is it?
So is my
You gotta show pulled in the site, you know how to do it. So I departed late in the education board, and then there's a shuttle service that takes you all back up to the robotics. Each robotics team has like to cheer when they're going. I just was so impressed.
What's your big class?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We were really trying to figure it out.
I know. And she was a very good job. I know, very good.
That was my guess.
I didn't realize there was so many.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know she would do that at every Yeah. We need to get to it.
Yeah.
I think they have competitions and then what they do is they'll have a battles or whatever and then you have like 3 teams that will be on the line. You get to strategically pick.
You could have one of those with all the other concepts. People's like $1 million.
Logistics and all that too. So they have teams did. And then coach those teams so you can do there's like grabbing 7 robotics together. So we'll try to get them on robotics is so crazy to me. It teaches kids so much. I like the problem solving. Oh yeah. It's very, very, very cool. It's a very cool thing that we have. And again, we're very fortunate that she has built, and it's all because of her, built that family town. Like, okay, our high schoolers are helping us, and like, it just stays in that position. So the kids do across the district. Overall,
Yeah. 12 teams.
They have a picture of their robotics. They have a picture, they sent it to me last year. It's huge. Like when you look at how. But we're at capacity. Are you showing up in the morning? I mean, we don't really.
Today actually, I slept in my alarm.
Yeah, it changes it too.
Yeah, I
always try to make her like.
So exhausted from yesterday. The only thing slept straight through it.
I've heard and also now starting to experience, but it's like there's nothing you can do about
Stand
it.
up.
There's a starting to become a crossover of athletes and those interested in robotics, but they take place at the same time.
Oh.
And so you kind of have to take and choose pretty early on.
Yep, that's all of them. Now that's coaches and kids.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, when I was teaching, I had high schoolers that were in, robotics and sports.
Yeah.
Just depends on what season.
Yep, exactly. My first team was in 2010. It was my first year as a
It was
AGS middle school. So from 2010 to now.
It's so
Because by the end of the year,
it is.
Just even like, so my son did it this year, the first freshman, just like, the amount of stuff that they do. So fortunate, like Clarence was actually his, just to have those.
I don't think there's anything wrong with
volunteering and trying to work with you.
You're walking fine. I am walking fine, that's not the problem. It's when I try to do anything other.
Are we all good?
Yep.
Okay. All right, we will restart at 6:32. All right, Dr. Bush.
Thank you, Ms. Rossmessler. Members of the Board of Education, we have 2 different presentations tonight. I shouldn't say presentations, 2 different overviews of our school of choice model. We're kind of briefing you on those this evening, and then we'll ask you to take action on them at our second February meeting. Each winter, schools in Michigan are asked to make a choice on how they will operate and if they'll operate on a school of choice program. And there's a couple of different options. The first option is to participate in the statewide schools of choice program under section 105 and 105C. We've done that in this district since 2009 and are going to be recommending that we continue to do it for the 25-26 school year. Districts are also given the option to participate in a cooperative agreement. Our school district did that prior to 2009 as part of the Genesee County School of Choice Consortium. The issue that we had in 2009 and the reason why we made the decision to go away from the county consortium model, which I believe has since dissolved, is it only allowed 1% in and 1% out. We had many more than 1% of our student enrollment wanting to come to Fenton area public schools. Districts also have the option not to participate in any school of choice program. We have always elected to participate, and most recently since 2009 have done so on the statewide schools of choice program. Statewide Schools of Choice program, which is identified as section 105, that's actually part of the law it's referring to, allows us to have unlimited inbound and unlimited outbound students within that school of choice window. To provide you with some statistics based on our most recently fully completed school year, because we still have kids coming and going this year. But in 2003, 2004, we had 679 non-resident students enroll in our district, which represents about 23% of our student population and about $6.5 million in state funding. In terms of outbound students that are our residents attending elsewhere, we had 321 students outbound. So we are clearly on the positive side of that equation, and it's something that we're very proud of. Just as a reminder, because we only talk about this once a year, individuals that are electing to participate in school of choice have to apply through the school of choice program through our enrollment office. And then those students' grades, discipline, and attendance are checked by the building principals. At the elementary, they go in a rotation because we're not sure what student will attend which school, so the 3 elementary principals rotate. And then at the middle school and the high school, they do, the administration of both those buildings does due diligence checking discipline, grades, and attendance of the school that they attended in prior years. If we see any issues with that, we can deny that student or take an additional step to essentially interview that student and inquire why they perhaps had a attendance problem, meet with their parents, etc. So while we do have a healthy school of choice population, we have a screening method in place to make sure that those students are going to be successful in our district. And then the other thing, monitoring this model that we've had since 2009, we've been fortunate that what our school of choice population has allowed us to do is to fill out our staffing and fill out our student population as such that we don't necessarily have to add staff to because of the schools of choice population, but it does allow us to fill out our ranks, if you will, so we're not having to necessarily reduce staff. So what we're recommending tonight on the general education side of the equation under the 105 program, and we'll bring back to you at our second February meeting, is to adopt a statewide school of choice model that we've operated in since 2009.
Any questions for Dr. Bush?
Dr. Bush, the numbers that you were talking about, the inbound and outbound students, do those represent kids, say the outbound? Are those kids that are quantitatively tracked at other public school institutions, or are those kids that are like in Fenton geographically and maybe unluckily we have a good parochial school, St. John's, are those kids? Can you clarify that?
Those are kids that are part of the state public school attendance system.
Okay.
So those are kids that are attending local or sometimes further away based on their parents driving back and forth, other public schools. It's a little bit more difficult to track the parochial and private schools. We do have a good relationship with both Holly Academy and St. John's, where we're communicating with them this week, in fact, about their 8th grade class enrolling at the high school, if they're so interested. So we're able to track the public, the private's a little bit more difficult.
And we can track if they started with us and left, but if they've never started with us, it's hard to track. You'd have to kind of get down to birth rates and kind of do that. But if they started with us and they left and went somewhere else, we typically know that.
Yeah, okay, I appreciate that. I just didn't know how we go about tracking it. I do know, like, historically, especially when my kids are in school, we get a good influx coming out of middle school from St. John's that don't choose to then go to Powers High School.
That's correct.
Or any other
those we would be able to track because we had or they're coming into us, we know where they're coming from. They're coming from St. John's or another location. But as Mrs. Sosowski said, if somebody, just using an example, was a St. John's student and then went to Powers, they were never in our system to start with. Or they were a Holly Academy student that for whatever reason, school of choice into Holly but they were a Fenton resident, we wouldn't necessarily know.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
How does that work at the kindergarten level? If someone wants to start school of choice for the kindergarten year, do we get notified if somebody says, I'm from Fenton, but I want to go to Linden?
Yeah,
Yes,
they
okay.
would enroll as a school of choice student.
Also,
So
what
we-
is, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We would be able to track them from their first entry point into our district.
But if they're going into kindergarten and they go to St. John's or Holly Academy, we wouldn't get notified.
Correct. Yep.
When is our kindergarten enrollment date?
We have enrollment starting for all students February 28th. February 28th, so re-registration and then enrollment will start that day. And then I believe Melissa has the kindergarten information and roundup.
Dates.
Yeah, we got a date.
Oh, I'm really glad I asked that.
Yep. Yeah, it's coming up.
So kindergarten parent meeting is on March 19th. That's the initial Young 5 kindergarten parents come learn about our district. And then we will have roundup on April 24th. And that's where you bring your kiddo with you, you do some screening process, some crafts, get some cool pictures, get your signing day picture and all of those things.
So that was a selfish question, I guess, but also from tying it back to this, are we more likely to know what our numbers are for kindergarten closer to that March, April, or even into late August timeframe, or?
Great. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great question. We have two different data points. We will look at really the latest I like to go is mid-May, but typically the 1st of May, we take a snapshot and say if school started tomorrow, this is what our kindergarten staffing needs would be. Contractually, we give the teachers a tentative assignment, their last day of school, what the fall would then be. And then we continue to monitor it throughout the summer, and it has been a mixed bag. We knew this past May that our kindergartens were pretty full. And so we made a decision in May before the teachers went home for the summer to add that additional kindergarten section in May, and it played out and it filled very well. Prior years, when they haven't been as full, or when we were kind of on the fence, or financially we were in a position where we needed to be a little bit more conservative, we've added another section. We've waited through the summer and added another section in August/late July. That's not the preferred method, but sometimes when we're on the fence, it is a little bit better to wait. That does upend our staffing process a little bit. So really kind of two different options. The most recent was we made the decision to add. It filled. We had very healthy kindergarten spots with some room available. Same with Young 5s. We would hope to do that again this year, but if we're ever in a position, it's not uncommon to wait towards the end of the summer.
If it helps, you can mark down 1%.
All right.
For state road, take it.
One thing that we did last year that may have helped, and we'll see if it has the same help this year, is that kindergarten roundup. That was the first year that we did the screening process, so people registered and signed up and got their paperwork all taken care of before or that day so they could participate.
That's what starts on the 28th of February?
April.
What was the 28th of
You
February?
can register starting February 28th.
The 25-26 school year window will open at the end of the month. Yep.
So if you know you're going to Fenton, you can register that day and be.
In fact, we might call you up, have you be the first one.
That
as a
sure
test
works.
case.
I would appreciate the reminder.
Yeah, we typically use staff member, other people that we know just to walk through so we have a real kid, the system. And
She's not age appropriate for Young 5, so
Yep.
yeah, so that's
Yep.
good. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. And then the next item, 5.4 is kind of a partner item as far as schools of choice go. So again, the name 105 comes from the section in the state code that discusses schools of choice. 105C is a subsection that deals particularly with our special needs students. And so we are going to recommend that the district, as we've done also with this one since 2009, opt in to the 105C program. And what that does is it allows any student who is within the county, but then also any student that touches upon Genesee County, the term that the state law uses as a district or an ISD that's contiguous to the Genesee Intermediate School District. What that does, and it's particularly important for us because Holly's so close, yet it is in Oakland County, what that does is it allows the district some discretion on accepting a student that may have a high need IEP or may require some additional costs. So under that model, if a student, for example, did want to come to Fenton, we do have a very strong special education program from Holly, Oakland County, which is a contiguous district. It allows our special education director to work with their special education director to, in some cases, recoup the cost of the additional funds associated with the IEP for that particular student. So what that does is it allows us to be able to negotiate or discuss with the district. For example, if the student had additional aid support or the student needed some specialized transportation, we're able to go back to that district and say, we will help we will accept this student as a school of choice child if you agree to help us offset some of the additional costs. Those are for students that tend to be high need specialized students. For our special education, that's more of a resource room type of student that doesn't have any additional specialized costs associated with it. Those are pretty straightforward. But what this does is allows us to recoup some of those costs with accepting a special education student coming from outside the county where we might need to have some additional expense associated with them.
Question specifically tied to that special education bit. If there's federal special education funding attached to that student, as it is as of today, does that funding follow the student if they do school of choice?
Yes, we're able to claim them under our IDEA funds. They would go on our roster for things like Medicaid reimbursement or IDEA funding. They then become a Fenton student and are part of our numbers there.
And to reiterate what Doug said, to collect all of that fund, you have to have that agreement in place.
Pursuant to the state law.
100%. So you have to have a 105C agreement in place. Let's say we were to take a student on from Holly and we accepted them as school of choice, and their funding would then follow them as long as the state sees that you have a section 105C agreement in place.
Those people accounting audits, they will ask to see the board document where this is approved. It's also important to us, we're just very unique geographically with the close proximity to not only Oakland County but Livingston County as well. This piece is important for us. Certainly we want to take all the students if they want to be here and provide that opportunity for them, but it does provide a little bit of a backstop for us if there's additional costs associated.
Following up on that, if IDEA funding were to be postponed or suspended or stopped, would we be able to, with our current budget, fund all of the students we currently take? Now, it's a loaded question.
Let me unpack it a little bit. That's no problem. The IDEA piece, if IDEA funding was frozen or stopped, those students that were outside of our district as part of school of choice, if we accepted them, they would be, at that point, our students.
Right.
Kind of period, end of sentence. Because when we accept them, if we negotiate some offsetting costs, that's part of it. So I think the larger point to it, and it's an important point, is if IDEA, was changed or adopted, regardless of the schools of choice piece, we would have like every other district in the country, we would have a pretty substantial problem, and that problem would be just simply a shortfall.
Regardless of school of choice.
Right, regardless of school of choice, absolutely. IDEA flow through money for us, in essentially, for everyone's benefit, the IDEA piece is simply the federal government. And it's a little bit of a complicated formula, but conceptually, we get a base foundation allowance of $9,608 dollars per student. And then we receive on a given year anywhere between $800,000 to $1 million of federal money. And IDEA stands for the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and that's the federal government coming in and providing funding in recognition of the fact that students who are diagnosed under IDEA and have a disability do require some additional funding. So to answer that question, you know, with you know, if IDEA were ever to stop, we really would have, off the top of my head, with about $1 million hole in the budget.
We'd have to fix our budget.
Yeah, yep, and if you recall, sometimes, or not sometimes, every time when our auditors do their presentation, they show that pie chart of where state, you know, how we're funded on our revenue side. The vast majority is state funding. There's a slice of federal funding, which is IDEA, our title funds, and then on the school lunch side and their fund, that's obviously all federal money. And then we have local tax effort. So yeah, that would be something that we would really have to stop and revisit like every other school district would.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So that, to kind of put a bow on those two pieces, 105 is for our regular school of choice program. 105C allows us to recoup some special education funding for students that live in the county contiguous to ours, important to us because of our proximity to Livingston and Oakland County. And we'll be back in just a couple of weeks to ask for the board's approval on those two items. Thank you.
5.6, district-wide school improvement team as Scott's district-wide professional development advisory committee.
Okay, good evening. This is a yearly item, again, like Dr. Bush's was, that we need to approve. So tonight I'm just presenting to you what it is, and then we'll take action on it on the 18th. But this action would allow us to utilize 38 of our professional development hours to count for instructional time. So even to be able to consider this option, we have to approve a committee to be our professional development advisory committee. And we currently do that through our MyKIP school improvement team acts as that committee. So this would be no change. It would be, again, approving that MyKIP team to act as the professional development advisory board. Any questions on that? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, 5.7, first reading of Neola policy 2264, 2266 updates. Mrs. Heidi Sissels.
Absolutely. This won't be a long policy reading, it'll be very short. But we do indeed have to update some policy based on some legislation that just got passed at the federal level. So I have for you tonight a first reading of basically two policies, a removal of a policy and then a revision of the existing policy. So if you'll remember earlier this year, we adopted two policies when it came to Title IX investigations. 2264 based on the 2024 regs that came out, and then 2266, which was based on the 2020 regs that came out. We had to keep both regulations in play because we had buildings that were under the Moms for Liberty kind of ruling that the federal courts came out with, and we still had other buildings like this one that still had to come under the 2024 regs. Currently on January 9th, 2025, in a Tennessee versus Cardona, the U.S. State's District Court for Eastern District of Kentucky issued a decision declaring that the 2024 regulations to be unlawful and setting them aside in their entirety, which means that's why we would remove policy 2264. In 2266, we have a sentence. Now, 2266 is our 2020 regulations that we will be abiding by, but we have to remove that first sentence. So you'll see there's a policy there, and it says effective August 1st of 2024. That's when the 2024 regs came into play. So we would take that statement out, and we're just using now the 2020 regs. So that's what I'm asking for as a first reading. I will give you a second reading in a couple of weeks,
But I will also ask for that to take place at that time as well. I don't want to wait for spring to do that. Any questions?
Did we or did we not? Can you clarify? Did we, doesn't it become automatic now? When the law changes, we don't have to change it now.
Well,
It automatically.
We have a sentence in both policies that say if there's any change into the law, we follow the law. But in the absence of a policy, we always follow the law. It's just you should bring your policies in line with whatever current regulations are in place. If you remember in the fall, we talked about anytime there's a change in administration, these change. They change over all the time.
Yeah.
So you just want to make sure your policies, you don't have, we could leave that policy there because we can't follow it by law, but you want to clean up your policies. You don't want to have policies existing there that you can't use.
No, I mean, I just assumed that it would automatically drop off once the rule into place. So,
unfortunately, you have to do
We
that.
have to vote
Gotcha.
to take it out of our policy manual.
Okay, so
Yes.
we physically have to do that. Okay.
We do, even though since this, I mean, our buildings with students were following the 2020, and since this ruling, because of that statement that we
Okay.
follow the law,
Yeah.
we've been doing that with the transportation and this building, but we now need to clean up and have it just be the 2020 policy.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I just want to say, based on how we wrote it, I mean, I know the policy committee doesn't exist anymore, but based on what we decided to do, this is a relatively easy, you heard me read it for 2 minutes, rather than enacting that short version that we discussed. Now we don't have to go back and reenact that whole big policy. We're just dropping it off and it's going back to what we had before we had any of that dialogue.
Gotcha.
Because we're changing the one sentence at the top.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right. Student representative reports. Okay, good thing you guys had your coffee
So we don't have a lot this time because exams, snow days, but for district-wide events, there is a band pre-festival concert on February 13th at 7, and the ambassadors concert is February 21st, also at 7.
There's also a senior night for the basketball team going on in about 5 minutes.
Yep.
So it's right here after it. And also, I know it's not really students, but my mom requested I ask you to get Thursday off for a snow day.
I saw one. I got up early this morning. Trust me.
I know.
4 a.m. wake up.
You know,
calls are
you
getting
did
old.
get the day after the Lions' last game off, though.
You're right. You're right.
So
I needed
kinda
that.
took care of
I
you.
needed the day off.
Yeah. There you go.
I needed it.
4 out of 5 days.
It was like a grieving day.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, that's true. Bereavement.
Okay, I just brought Owen in. This is our AGS student of the month. He's in 6th grade, right? Okay, so I've got some information to share about him with you guys. He was the AGS student of the month for February. He told me his favorite classes are tech, where he practiced keyboard skills, and art, and he said his favorite recent drawing was of a polar bear, right? Okay. He's wanting to play basketball, but he loves watching football, the Detroit Lions. Love that. He said it's too hard to choose a favorite player, which I agree with. He was excited when he was chosen as Student of the Month, but he thought he was in trouble until after they took the picture. He wasn't really sure what was going on. And he wanted us to give a little shout out to his 2 favorite teachers, Mrs. Thomas, who's his science teacher, and Mrs. Is it Couch?
Yeah.
Who's his ELA teacher.
Awesome.
Very good.
Very cool.
Congrats,
Thank you
buddy.
guys for coming.
Yeah. Just hang tight. We got something for you too.
Okay, well, that's it from us. Unless you
Yeah.
guys have something.
Any
Yeah,
questions?
really short.
Any questions for the students?
Okay.
Just, I wanted to tell you, we have some positive news, and that will be coming out next week when it comes to the calendar. Much to your influence.
You're like leaving them on that Thursday.
Yeah, I don't know.
A completely revamped SAT and ACT.
I wish.
I just want to throw Heidi under the bus here, figuratively and literally. Not literally, but she's the one that makes the decisions for snow days. It's not us. Just so you know. And so far, yeah, it's been a lot this year.
Yeah, it's been a lot. It's been a lot of early week trips, so.
It's a tough, always a tough decision.
You're welcome.
One last.
All right.
Well, hopefully since there was that string of them, we can get some of them forgiven if it was necessary. Because there was a lot of districts out that week.
That's true. Just 2 days. It's just 2
Yeah.
days. That would be great.
Yeah. Mr. Pierce, do you have a Genesee County or a government relations update from Lindsay?
A little bit from both. For Genesee County, the January meeting was basically like our organizational meeting, and the selection of officers, that type of thing. And all the officers at the county all remained the same. They just did it as a group. We make a motion that they all stay the same, and they all accepted, and they were all voted, so it was like easy. We talked about the February presentation that's going to come up with the dinner and training. Is that February 20th? I didn't have it on.
Yeah.
I'm flipping back and forth between.
Yep.
So we talked about that last time, so that's a real good training that's available. The scholarship committee is going to be starting. Heidi, did you get the information from the county to send out to the seniors for scholarships? So
Anna has it.
Good.
Ready to
So
roll.
we'll get some essays coming in and some candidates for our Fenton person to represent us in the Genesee County scholarship, and we do 6 $750 scholarships, I believe it is, throughout the county. And Mr. Welch is going to be the scholarship representative this year. So we'll get to go through that, all those amazing resumes and letters and everything. It's a hard choice. They're all very deserving. So March is meeting. March 20th is the Bring a Friend meeting. So hopefully we'll be able to get Mrs. Sutsky to come along with me to do the March meeting, and so she can see what the Genesee County meeting's like. And that's about it for the January meeting. For the government relations, I didn't attend the January meeting. It was the day after Sassy got fixed, so we had to lay low for a couple days. But they did do the they only concentrated on the legislative priorities. So, and I believe they published those to everybody to let everybody know what the legislative priorities are for going forward through this year. And then we have a meeting next Friday in Lansing that I'll be going to for the Genesee County, and then we'll start getting into all the fun stuff that's been happening with legislators and government. So I'll have more for you next meeting.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Pierce? All right. Citizens' request to address the board. We have one, Ms. Kelly.
I apologize. I had it all set here and then it went back. I'm happy I came tonight. It was really fun to see the kids and all the work the teachers do. I have two of my kids are teachers, so I totally appreciate the work they put in. And it's just a real good feeling tonight to see all the good that's going on. So what I'm going to do, I wrote everything down, but I'm just going to talk from the heart. I went into the Fenton High School website and it looked different. I think it's been revamped and maybe freshened up. It looks a lot different than it did before, and it's more interactive with all the schools. But I was going in to read information about the SEL. So I found SEL, then I went into wellness, And then I went into, it led me to books and reading. And I went into that and was looking at the page, and then when you scroll down a little bit, it says Fenton High School's, Fenton High School favorites. So it's the favorite books of the Fenton High School, and it may refer to the fact of how often or how many people check it out, or wasn't sure if it meant students' favorite or the high school's favorite, but when I went in and looked at it, I was pretty shocked. It was very graphic, a lot of just not nice material. I have one parent told me that I know that there's an issue where, schools have books that not everybody agrees if they should be reading them or not. And that's, we don't all agree on that, but it happens. One mom said she bought a couple of the books just to really check it, because some of the, when you go in to read the reviews of the books, sometimes they sugarcoat it. They're not telling you everything that's in it. I found one site that I use, and it's called Common Sense Media, and it kind of tells you everything that's in it. So, I was just a little confused because I heard the high school did send a letter home telling parents there's some inappropriate things at the library. But now, when you go to the website, what a couple parents told me, they got a letter, it's inappropriate, but so maybe your student, your child, shouldn't, check it out, or they should know what they're checking out. They shouldn't check it out if that's something as a family, you wouldn't want them to read. Anyways, so I was just a little confused why it was connected with SEL, which is to help manage students with strong emotions. Oh, shoot. Can I say one more thing?
You could share your last thought.
So I just wondered why these particular books. It seemed like there'd be more positive. The last thing is I did look at a couple of the elementary schools, and the one thing I noticed in their books, their favorites, they have favorites too. They're all for like a school ahead of them. So most of the favorite books at the elementary school, when you look at them, they're all middle school age level, as far as age. So I wasn't quite sure why the younger kids are reading books that are above their reading level, age-wise. I noticed that. So I don't know if maybe the board can take a look at the sites and the books and just kind of see what you think. Maybe why, if you think those are issues too, that would be nice. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. We have a couple board announcements. Our next meeting is the 18th, and as we're all kind of getting into this new cadence, reminder, it is 6 p.m. for the second meeting, so just note that. And then the 20th at 5:30 is the GISD Building Safer Communities Together. So let Stephanie know if you haven't already, if you would like to attend. 5:30 is dinner and then the presentation after. Did I miss any announcements?
Can you tell me when you need to know about the 20th?
By the 13th, I believe.
All right. Discussion, we have a couple discussion items, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Pierce. These are things that he asked to bring up for discussion, so I will let you kick it off.
Okay, a couple ideas that came out of the last Genesee County meeting as well. We were talking about how certain boards have board members that are compensated and certain boards don't. And they kind of did an informal, raise your hand. And there was very few boards that were there that were not compensated. And they didn't get into, specifics of like how much or whatever. But I know from talking to some of the people at the MASB conferences that I've been going to that, there's a district down in Detroit that they get like $6,000 a year. And that's a lot. And I'm not saying that we should get paid that much, but I do think that it's important for us to be able to get some type of compensation just because of the amount of hours and time that we put into it, and the fact that when part of our job is to be educated and be trained, and if you want to go to these trainings, you're paying your own gas to get to them. In my case, I'm putting my dog in daycare for the day so I can go to these trainings. I just think that it would be helpful to some people that if they could get some type of compensation for either a meeting per meeting basis or an annual stipend or some type of thing, that it would increase our effectiveness in being able to get to these trainings. And so that's sort of the first thing I just wanted to start the conversation with is do you think that we should be able to get compensated? And then if we go forward and say that yes, then what type of compensation would you think would be appropriate?
I'll start. I personally, this again, just me, I'm just going to give you my 2 cents. I don't believe I should be compensated for what I'm doing here. I took this on as a volunteer position knowingly, wholly,
right.
That it was going to be that. Now, the other piece of it is the education piece of it. If you're going to go and get educated and you're going to do it on behalf of the board, and there's some costs that are involved, maybe that's a different discussion. I think they're 2 separate things in and of, that core discussion point. But from a board standpoint, I don't believe so. And I'm just going to give you my personal experience.
Yeah.
Having coached as long as I did, and the small amount of money, it literally is more work and more cost when you start doing your taxes for anything that you get, because then you're a subcontractor and you're paying separate Social Security on it. And it got to the point where, from a coaching standpoint, I just deferred it. I gave it back, told them to it was more work than it was worth the small stipend of money that you would get.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want to deal with it. It was just easier to not deal with it. Again, just my personal opinion, that's all.
I don't have a strong opinion on it for me as a person, because I also know it was volunteer, but I think from an overall, what is the goal of our board at school and how do we want to be, I think the discussion warrants. We all, I don't know your all personal situations, but I think we all are in positions in our life where we can financially afford to dedicate time to this effort. If we are hoping to get a more diverse board, from age demographics to whatever we want, sometimes incentivizing with some pay could be helpful. But given that, we're not ever going to be able to pay someone's salary to be a board member, so I don't know how much that discussion comes into play for our board, but that's a discussion I've seen in government boards in general, like with the county and otherwise. Like if you're doing part-time, you draw a different demographic than if you can pay a full-time salary. But I don't think that comes into play here, but I understand why Mike would ask this, because there is also something to all of us individually sitting here may be dedicated, but in the future, I think there was a former board member before I joined that was the chair of the policy that wanted us to think about our future selves or something. I remember he said that. What kind of board do we want to be? Do we want to be one that's volunteer? Or do we want to be one that has a stipend? So I think there's pros and cons, but I'm with you, Matt, where as a personal, I wouldn't be voting for myself if we voted for a stipend. I'd be voting for what do we want the board to look like years down the road, maybe when all of us are gone.
And it is hard to vote for yourself.
Right.
And then so your point about, what do we want this board to go forward in the future, that's an important point for us to look at.
Or can it be incentivized with, you get a stipend if you do X or Y or Z, whereas just general board membership may be volunteered, but if you
Yeah.
complete such and such training, maybe you get a small stipend in addition to whatever the cost was, to incentivize more MASB
And
courses,
if people
for example.
if people don't feel comfortable with taking the money, they can always just donate it back to the Fenton Education Foundation.
So those are just my thoughts on it. I don't have a strong opinion.
When you go to any of the trainings in Lansing, do you at least get mileage for driving there?
Yeah, we get mileage for those, yeah.
And I think just to give you a couple insights into kind of, Mike's talked about it, I've kind of talked to a couple other school districts. The one thing and Matt kind of alluded to this, you can't be an elected person and receive compensation. So it would have to be very unique, because then we'd have to pay you, I'm gonna assume, through a payable.
Yes.
Wait, what, can you repeat that? You can't be an elected person and receive compensation?
You can't be an employee of the school
Oh, yeah,
district, right? Like, so
Yeah.
when we do our employee runs, right, our kind of compensation runs, like that we submit to the IRS, we have to submit you a little differently. So we would have to probably do it through a payables. And there's some jockeying that goes on with that. Not that that's not doable, we absolutely can do it. I would just say that I think you should consider, if you're going to take a stipend as well, just consider maybe putting a cap on how much each board member could rack up. Because I will just say right now, if all of you attended all of the training that Mike did, God bless him, and I love that he does it, but if all of you did that, that would be very costly, right? Because we only get reimbursed so much through the state.
It was just an example.
Sure, so I just throw that out there just as a part of the conversation. And again, you guys set the budget, right? So the budget has been set for 24-25. If you were to choose to decide to start getting compensation, that would have to start July 1, because we don't have a line item for it yet, right? So those are just the things that I would fly out there. I don't have a personal, I don't have a personal reason why you shouldn't get paid.
And
Let's
I
just
think
put it that way.
if we did that, I think it should be the same for everybody regardless of how many things people go to. Because if it's gonna be per meeting, just base it off of the two meetings per month for everyone. Or $1 amount for the whole year for everyone. I don't think it should be different for
Sorry, I was just gonna say, he gave that one example of that school in Detroit, but I think you also, more consistently, we're talking, just in some of the things I was looking around Genesee County, it's not that extreme.
No,
It's $20.
Yeah, it's like $25 a meeting, $50 a meeting.
I think that's what Grambling does, is
Yeah.
50.
Yeah, it's not a huge lump sum, but I do think we have to understand how that also plays into does that then make us a 1099? What does it do to taxes? All of those factors.
Keep that in mind. And then I believe that there should be some sort of compensation or some sort of reimbursement as it pertains to training. Anytime you're going to do that on behalf, especially if you're doing things on behalf of us as a board as well, which some of that stuff that you are doing absolutely is. I'm going to address the elephant in the room. Lord knows, over the last 4 years, we've taken on some pretty tough decisions, and how that sits within the taxpayers within our district. The last thing I want to do is just create a fire where there isn't one at this point. Because the last thing I would want, again, I'm just addressing the elephant in the room. The last thing I want to be accused of is making a decision on a bond item and then getting accused of potentially that somehow getting tied in with some sort of ancillary compensation that we get in there. Personally, I just want nothing to do with it, and it's just easier for me that way. Again, just me. So.
how would we go about, I don't think we're not voting on anything today, right?
No,
So
we're
like,
just-
what are,
we're just talking.
you're just kind of feeling out what we think.
Yeah.
Have we, so we wouldn't, I would say if we were going to do it, my thought would be we wouldn't want to do a budget amendment to do it. For partially the reason he said, just in general, it seems like a bad look, but. The other thing to consider is once you do it, once we do it, I don't think it can be easily undone. Because if a person gets elected, knowing that it's there and then you undo it, I think it would have to be undone at the start of like a term. Does that make sense what I just said? Okay, so just considerations. I don't have a strong opinion on it.
Does Mrs. Alyssa, do you have any grants that are available for board members that can be applied for? That would
I
cover-
did
I'm half
pay for a
serious.
bunch of the training pieces. We do receive some grant reimbursement for parts of the training, but not
As compensation.
as compensation that I'm aware of. I haven't ever seen one.
Well, and when you take those, like your level 1 MASC classes, and quite a few of the level 2s, but not all, they can apply for $100 reimbursement back to the district for those classes. But once you get into the higher level classes, that's coming out of district funds.
Yeah, it used
There's
to be like a lot larger
Yeah.
list,
And
and we
they've
found
narrowed
out
it
last
down
year
this
that
year.
it really
Yeah.
narrowed
Like,
down.
the list got so much smaller because I had all these out and they all kicked back. And we're like, what the heck? I just want to make sure I'm following, but Mike hasn't been paying out of pocket for any of these?
No,
right?
no,
Okay.
no.
I just want to make sure that wasn't
No.
happening because we're like, let's write a check, let's
No.
vote on it right now.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're not paying out of pocket to go to a training.
Yeah, nor for your hotel or your travel.
Do we ever send representatives to the conferences in Washington DC? Because I know some districts in our county have, but I don't know how they
I think that's
pay.
through the county. I think that's why. I think, like James.
That's through your county.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they just kind of, I don't know
Maybe
if
they
it's,
pay for
I don't know if that's
themselves.
through the county. I've never heard them say it at the county level. So I think it's I think it's through the district and.
Yeah, when I was the representative up there, I believe he mentioned that he had gone to Washington. But that was at a group level.
Yeah,
Not-
he was probably an officer
Right.
of the Genesee County, so that's why it was a
Correct.
county.
Correct.
So,
Okay.
but if just, an ordinary board member wanted to go to the national conference,
wondered.
I don't know how that would get paid for. So, anyway, just wanted to throw that out there, that there's, a lot of districts that get compensated. And
Do you know the Genesee County number on that?
there was only like 3 or 4 hands that went up that were not compensated. So, it's like the majority are and the minority are not. So. And I asked Richard Hill from Kersley, because he knows everything, and he didn't really have, he didn't have what? I'm like, do you have a spreadsheet of who gets compensated? And he's like, no, I don't. I'd like to have that information, but I'm like, oh, okay, because I was going to talk about it with my board, and so he said, well, I'll see what I can find. So, but I haven't heard
Probably have
nothing
to
from
go
him
to
yet.
the policies of each individual district and look it up.
Yeah.
Like ours says no compensation, I think our like says 50.
Yeah. And
Might be a little tiny.
I think, was Linda get 25 a meeting or something? 20. Yeah. So, anyway, something to think about there.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
I'm just sitting here thinking, trying to do the math. What is it, a 1099 is 600? So 20 a meeting probably keeps them under that, right?
Yeah, generally speaking, it's 600. We have a little bit of flexibility there. But as mentioned before, and Mrs. Sostowski indicated, it would be some type of 1099 situation, because to put you on payroll, it has a little bit more IRS implications. We have to tax you FICA on that, those types of things.
Fenton's never done this in the past. Not that I'm aware of. Doug, in your
We
tenure?
used the ceremonial $1, right?
Yeah, we used to have many years ago a ceremonial $1 that was
Paid in cash. Used to go down to the bank and get.
Scandalous.
Better be crisp, just like
Yeah.
the Duke brothers, right?
Yeah, it was a shining $1 coin that was presented. We got away from that just because we got away. Certainly if it's the board's prerogative, we would find.
Couldn't afford the $7. That's back when the state was eyeing in, and every dollar counted. I do appreciate the conversation, Mike, I want to make sure we're very clear in this. This is not my feelings are not directed at you at all, okay?
It's fine.
It's a valid
You're allowed to
conversation.
I was just gonna say, if we had a proposal that was reasonable, I'd probably vote for it, because if we're in the minority especially, but like I said, I don't have strong opinions either way, I just don't. I'm sorry if I interrupted you, Matt.
Any other thoughts? All right. Well, we can circle back to that. I appreciate the background for sure.
Yeah. And then the other thing that was given as an idea at the Genesee County meeting with that I thought was really cool was that one of the schools mentioned that they do a senior scholarship for somebody that's not like, our senior scholarships, we have all these people that are, like the top students and they do a most improved student. They look at like the improvement of grade point average from their freshman year to their senior year, and they might not have a stellar grade point average, but they might have just improved leaps and bounds, or they might have overcome some great obstacles and hardships in their life to get to that point. So it's something that's a combined, like looking at the increased grade point average and speaking with counselors and trying to find out who do you know that's like really had a hard time but's just like still overcome that to be at the level that they're at, whatever that is. So I thought that was something that we could do, and maybe even make it a board scholarship that that we could make it the Board of Education scholarship for most improved senior, so something along that lines. So.
When I saw this on there, I'm going to piggyback on this because I was quite excited to see this because this is something I've been wanting to bring up, and I think timing-wise, this is an incredibly perfect timing for you. Okay. Or any of our seniors going out there. Last year, the Wilsterman Foundation, which is one of the largest scholarship grants that are out there for kids in our area, they gave out, I think it's 125 is the number. You'd have to consult with the site for the Wilsterman Foundation, but it's based out of Lapeer, very affluent family based off of McDonald's, acquisition and growth of all these McDonald's that the gentleman had. Well, the foundation gives out, they're mandated to give out this 125, or maybe it's 150, it's somewhere right around that number, scholarships a year. Well, it's, as some of you already know, it's a $20,000 scholarship. It's $5,000 a year for 4 years consecutively. And I know how important it is. It's huge. And I've had 2 of my 4 kids that were fortunate enough to get that scholarship. Now, that being said, last year, they only had 300 applicants. That's literally every other kid. It's a 1 in 2 chance of getting that scholarship. And the unique thing about it is that it's not given to the highest GPA. It's not given to a science standout. It's not given, it's actually mandated to look for common, hardworking kids that are exceptionally strong in taking leaps within the school, their 4 years at school, and doing things that were out of their comfort level and are looking to just find a better way to grow up and get a good education and something to help them along the way. It's one of the most amazing scholarships I've ever seen. And it's so underutilized. And I'm not looking to go and advertise this all over Genesee and Livingston counties, or Oakland counties. I'm a little biased. I think our kids are awesome here and they should all get it. But having the conversation with the kids about what's available out there, because so many kids, and I don't want to minimize some of the scholarships that are out there already, but you're dealing with $500, $750, $1,000 scholarships that are one time, and those are great, and those can stack up, especially if you get multiples, if you put in the time and effort to go and apply for them. But something like this, to be able to have the conversation with the kids that are actually going to start applying and really knowing in depth about what's out there, what's available, and how even us as a board, how we can help to try to give our kids a leg up on acquiring these monies that are out there.
I think probably Hannah can allude to all of this is scholarship season. So what will happen is they'll get all of the alerts on what are all the scholarships, and then there's a giant form that they fill out what scholarships they're interested in. And then Lindsay Grady and the high school staff will make sure those kids get connected with that scholarship application. So there is no shortage of opportunity to apply. The one issue we have is that kids don't do the application. They don't do the essay, they don't do the application, and they don't put in the work to do it. The Wilsterman Scholarship is a great scholarship, but it requires you to put in some effort on your essay. And if you don't, if you just, willy-nilly it, you're not gonna get it. So I think it's a conversation that I can have as well with the high school staff and with Lindsay Grady, but I know that this is the season that all of that is coming out.
Do you ever need somebody to go and talk to them about repaying student loans?
Yeah, absolutely. I was right there with you.
If you like. You
Yeah, so,
take
I
it out of
mean-
one of the $750 that we already give out, or?
No, it would have to be a scholarship that you would create, yeah.
It'd be something new, so I'm not sure, the Western thing is great, but
Yeah, no, this is complete sidebar. It's just, mine was more of an education piece and being able to know the depth of what these offer and what's out there, truly. I know there's a list and those types of things, but more we can help them fully understand.
The cost of it, yes.
Yeah, and what it really means.
I will say, I think Dana was gonna say
I was
something.
just gonna say, I think Mr. Backer's presentation earlier in the year for seniors and senior parents that had some of the scholarship opportunities early on to let you know, like, hey, these things are coming, these things, you're gonna see these throughout the year. I know the Wilsterman was on there, but that was early on in senior year.
Yeah, and I think though, if you wanna create a senior scholarship, I'll just touch upon that. The district before, many years ago, before I came to Fenton, the district that I was in before this did have a board scholarship, and they called it the Phoenix Award. And so what it was is the board had, recommendations from the high school staff, and kids would apply for the scholarship, and, Phoenix rise out of the ashes or whatever, and so then the board would grant that scholarship to that student, right? And then that Phoenix Award would then designate a staff member that had the most impact on them. And they would get the Starfish Award.
Oh, cool.
So it was a very cool kind of tying in of kind of some of that scholarship. Now, the board did fundraisers to create the money for that scholarship. Like, they would I would sit on top of McDonald's and, pay for people to get down. And so it was that type of thing. I think it's, while I love the fact that you guys want to give back to seniors, I don't feel good about you spending your own money. If we're talking about compensating you because you're spending so much time, I don't necessarily think it's great that you're spending your own money to create a scholarship. I'm more than happy to help you guys create some type of fundraising mechanism for it if you want, and give you ideas, because I know that's how other people take it on.
There's a lot of
Bring it
There's a
on.
lot of risk with using our own budget money to select any number of scholarships. You're excluding some and including others, regardless of what the criteria are. So I would think it would have to be fundraised for, but depending on the
But I think
amount.
that's a cool idea.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I like it.
You know, no different than what we're doing at the county level, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just on a micro level. Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Sounds good. Thanks for your time. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Mike. All right, so superintendent's report. Yes, I have 3 things for you. I have, of course, the bond update that we've been doing, but I also have, as I kind of told you guys in your board and weekly updates, I went to the Michigan Career Ed Tech Ed Conference last week. Probably one of the best conferences I've ever been to, and I've never been to it. So many great ideas when it comes to career and tech ed. And our teachers were there, as well as our CTE and EDP coordinator, and we came out of that conference reinvigorated with some ideas on how to really expose kids to the trades. So, there was, I went to a presentation where you had 6 different trades presenting, and one of the trades, like elevator mechanics and elevator electricians, are making more than doctors right now. So there's lots of, and I don't think kids ever think about that as a trade. They think about, okay, I'm going to be an electrician or a plumber or whatever. But there's very specific trades that I think we can expose our kids to that they wouldn't know, right? And then so what came out of that is I think we're going to do a trades fair, and we're going to host it. And I think I've convinced Linden and Lake Fenton to jump on board as well, so that we can get, because a lot of these trades want exposure to a lot of kids. They won't come just for a few. So I think we're going to try to see what we can do. I had Lindsay Grady working with the other 2 CTE coordinators, and then I have a meeting with the superintendents in 2 weeks, and we'll be talking about that. But I think that's really exciting. And what they had is they basically had QR codes. So you would go to a trade and you had a QR code, and then it would tell you, okay, this is when the apprenticeship application is, this is your level of earning, and all of the very cool things that you can do around that. There's a huge trade shortage right now, just like there's a huge teacher shortage. So anything we can do to kind of help them and then possibly expose our kids to, I think would be awesome. So that's an idea that came. I think we're going to look at the fall, only because then we hit all of the apprenticeship deadlines. If we tried to do it and pull it off this spring, we've missed quite a few trades that have already kind of gotten their apprenticeship deadlines in. So we're hoping to do that. I'm really excited about it. I think it'll be very cool if we can. I'd like to bring in operating engineers, bring in some heavy equipment. I'm sure Joe will love it that I'm going to bring it down into the parking lot. But, those types of things, just to expose kids to a lot of those things. We take kids down to operating engineers, and we take kids up to the locals that we have. But I think if we can get them here and create some type of tradition where kids can be exposed to those professions, I think it's really wise.
Well, and even on a local level,
Yeah.
I think that's even better for our community.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So I think that's an idea that came out of that. A lot of ideas, as I said on that subcommittee for the county, some ideas more county-wide that I got that I'm gonna kind of talk about with the other superintendents. But one cool thing that Lenawee County does in their CTE building, because they have something very similar to ours. Ours is much larger, but Lenawee County, they have certain grades that they take the kids to the CTE center. So like their 3rd graders always go to the CTE center. And it's like all 3rd graders kind of go up there and they get to the, the fire academy. They go to certain things. So it's really quite cool. And we do it at the 8th grade level, and we do it at the 11th grade level, but I really think it would be really cool to get some type of K-5 presence there. Now, of course, GCI has to be willing to host them, so that's a conversation that I have to have.
Speaking of CTE, isn't there an open house like in a couple weeks?
Yep.
Yeah. So there's a CTE open house. I think it's 2 weeks from Thursday. Yeah. Maybe. 3 to 6 o'clock. I think something like that.
Yep.
I don't. Did that go out to everybody?
It does.
Because I saw Andrew Speece's post from
Yep.
to get the date off of that, but I didn't see it come through anything.
It's in the high school.
That's all the high school, it's in the high school newsletter. February is CTE Appreciation Month or CTE Awareness Month, so they always have it during that time. And it's going in my newsletter too, by the way, which is ready to go out. Any questions about that? Some exciting stuff. Yeah, I'm excited about that, really excited. And then bond update, I just kind of wanted to review a little bit where we are. We had a really exciting week last week. Starting to talk about playgrounds, so fun. But just so you guys kind of know where we are, current project activities, AGS Middle School Administration Office Edition. Delivered, set, and completed all the startup of the new rooftop unit for the space. Tied in addition to existing building power, finished installation of electrical equipment, installed all aluminum frame doors, electrified hardware, glazing, finished installation of ceiling grid, started installing ceiling tiles and light fixtures. It is really coming together. I was in there last week. You can totally see it, and it's awesome. Schedule status, we're looking ahead. The middle school office edition, they're going to finish lighting and overhead inspections. They'll start installing the wood doors on the offices, the hardware of those doors, and then start installing casework by the second week of February. Casework would be the cabinetry, any of that kind of fixed furnishings. And then while Ellen remodel, Alka's working through the material submittals and procurement for our courtyard area. AGS Middle School renovations contracts have been written and based on approval recommendation from you guys. They're going to start to receive submittals and material procurement to start the classroom egress windows. If you'll remember, that was part of the bond. Lighting and lock sets by the end of March. So remember, we're turning over all of those keyed locks to thumb pushes, and so that you can see from the exterior whether something is locked or not, and from the interior. So those thumb pushes, that will go into AGS, as well as the egress windows. And remember, in AGS, they're fixed windows. There's only one way in and one way out of those classrooms. Best practices say in a tragedy, you want two ways out of a situation. And so those egress windows will allow us to have that second way out. So that's very exciting. North Road, State Road, Tomac Eastern, and all of those additions, the contracts have been written in based on bond approval of you guys. OC is starting to receive submittals and material procurement. Teams met at the end of January with Fenton Schools to finalize playground equipment, which was last week. Materials and color selections. Temporary egress and mobilization to begin the end of March. So just so you guys are aware, during spring break, we are going to construct the egress ways of all three elementaries. So what that means is the egress, you have to have an emergency exit or egress exit when you start construction. If we do that over spring break and inconvenience our buildings just a little bit, then they can start construction on June 2nd. They don't have to build that egress on June 2nd. That's already built, and we can start actual construction. It's very important that we try to keep in a timely fashion so that our people can get back in the buildings when they need to start school. So that's where we're at there. All projects for 2025 have been designed and bid out. Budget status, construction projects are bought on the budgets, and we have been updated to reflect all awards. At this time, the projects are tracking within the overall budget.
And are they tracking on schedule?
Yeah.
Do you have any?
Yeah, we're actually ahead.
Oh, good.
Knock on wood, please knock on wood. We're actually ahead.
Don't say it.
I know. We're actually ahead.
Good.
Yeah, we're rolling on AGS. Now, AGS was one building. Come this summer, we're gonna have 5 of 6. So that's where I think it's gonna get dicey. But let's hope we have just as much good fortune as we've had. That would be great. So that's it for bond update. Anybody have any other questions about the bond?
One thing, Ms.
Yep.
Sosowski, if I can point out,
You
just
got
for
it.
board members, is currently working with a reporter from our local paper. I think we'll probably see a story relatively soon just on the status of the construction, the contracts awarded, and the link to some of the pictures that we have. So that should be out, I would imagine, in the next week or two.
Yeah, go ahead.
On press notes, when some of these things open and things, are we maybe gonna do like ribbon cuttings or anything like that?
We talked about that, we just talked about that. I'm so glad you said that because, you know, we talked last week for the playgrounds. You know, there is no other playgrounds in our city. Did you know that? Bush Park has a little something.
I'm quite
Yeah,
aware
people
of
complain about it on social media all the time.
But at this point, our playgrounds are the community playgrounds, right?
Yeah.
So I think, you know, I need to get something out to the community to let them know that the playgrounds are being reconstructed this summer, so they won't have them. But I also want to make sure they know, you know, we want to do some ribbon cuttings because some of these playgrounds, man, are very, very, very cool.
Yeah, I think we need to be strategic about how we market that because I know we don't need to start a war with the city or anything, but I know they have come under fire about our park system quite a bit. And as a parent who thinks my child's going to die every time she goes down the slide in downtown, I think they deserve it a little bit.
Yeah.
But
and these will be, I mean, so when we revamp the playgrounds, there's playground equipment that is staying and just getting revamped. But there's also brand new large pieces coming in.
And it's gonna be accessible and it's gonna be
100%. It'll be poured in place and they'll all have, somebody who is wheelchair bound will have at least one piece of equipment to play on. Several. Sometimes there's, State Road, I think they were gonna end up with 3 pieces of equipment to play on that are kind of ADA accessible, maybe 4, plus the swing. Yeah, good. So, very cool stuff though. Like, I think you just don't know what you don't know. I've said in my next life I'm gonna be a playground designer. In my next life, that's what I'm gonna do. Oh, it's so much fun. Last thing that I have for you guys is just our contract with Oli. If you guys are unfamiliar with what Oli is kind of a private swim club that we lease our pool out to. It is fairly lucrative for our district. It also helps us offset the costs that we have for our pool. I'm recommending that we renew that contract with Oli with one caveat, and we've been talking with Oli quite a bit. Our utility costs have gone up, and so we are going to probably increase their hourly rate. But we were going to do that for this right now, but I did talk to Oli, and they have built their club fees based upon the rate which we settled on at the beginning of the year. So that rate won't go up until the end of that kind of swim season between short course and long course. That rate will go up per hour just to make sure we're we're not making a ton of money off of it, but we need to make sure we're covering our costs as well. Just want to make sure you guys were aware of that. We've had that Oli swim contract 5 years. So we're just renewing.
Yeah.
Any questions about that? Okay, that's all I had for you guys.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Do you have support?
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll adjourn at 7:37.
And I'll put this out. Isn't that cute? They 3D printed that. I know, I'll put it out on our